Okay, good afternoon, everybody,
Hello.
and welcome. It's Monday, February 27th, about 2:31. We're convening a meeting of the Board of Elections at the Board of Elections in Montgomery County. We have a quorum, and I guess the first item we'll start with is the approval of the minutes from January 23rd, 2017.
I move we accept the minutes as amended. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, those minutes are approved. I don't think there's any, Margaret, there's no additions or changes to the agenda.
We do have another set of minutes.
Oh, we do?
We have the Board of Canvassers.
Oh, that's right. And you mentioned something about the date?
Yes, I did want to point out that the date says 2016. I'd just like to make that change to 2017.
January 23rd?
2017.
Okay.
And there are edits also presented on that.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the January 23rd, 2017?
I move
Board
to
of Canvassers?
accept the minutes with the changes with the date.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Those minutes are approved. There's no additions or changes to the agenda. Lisa, do we have any public comments? Okay.
So I'd just like to bring up that we do have a set of executive session minutes that were sent out last week, late last week.
Yeah.
I don't know if the board had an opportunity to look over them. I do have them with me.
I know it, yeah.
Do we want to approve those?
Should we approve it?
Executive session right here.
Yes, executive session. Can you, Jim? Here.
I can't remember whether I submitted it. I don't know.
There were no changes.
That's the whole.
The short one, yeah.
Does anybody want to take a look at that?
It's just,
That's
I don't think it's
David.
in the package.
I didn't see it. Is it in the package?
No.
It would not be in the
No,
regular session.
no, we got
folder.
it. We got a separate email.
Yes,
Then.
right.
I skimmed it.
I
but
got
I
one
didn't-
page.
No, he was asking whether you.
It would not because
see
it's
it?
executive
This is
session.
the portion where the staff was
Right.
present.
So I move we accept that, the minute. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, those minutes are approved.
Thank you.
Executive session. Okay. Was there any public comment?
No, sir.
Okay. So Margaret, your report?
Okay. Personnel, the temporary staff associated with post-election maintenance has completed the digital scanner 200. That would be the polling place equipment and early voting equipment, and needs to complete the maintenance on the ballot marking device units and then the electronic poll books. We were informed last week that the state Maryland Department of General Services is implementing a new inventory system, and staffing will be required to complete this assigned task. We have not received parameters or a description of what that all entails, but the equipment will need to be uploaded in some manner or form of all of the equipment that we currently have. And then the only other thing that I have is that Allison did attend the TGDC meeting related to the voting systems guidance on February 14th. And, is there anything you really want to add to that? It's very technical.
Yeah, I don't know that there's any element of it that's of particular interest to the board at this moment in time, but fundamentally what it is was a forward motion on the federal voting system standards and the next version of the federal voting system standards. That was what that meeting was about. Natasha Walker from the state board gave a presentation at that meeting on the clear ballot audit as well.
Okay. That's it for personnel and budget.
Okay, good afternoon. We sent to you in advance the latest budget spreadsheet through the month of January, tracking at year-to-date expenditures of $5.3 million of our $8.6 million budget. Since that came in during the month of February, we did receive our second invoice from the State Board of Elections, which totaled $833,425. You'll see that reflected in next month's spreadsheet. In addition, the Office of Management and Budget performs quarterly analyses at the second and third quarter of each fiscal year, and we were notified that they were originally, well, they were projecting a $700,000 deficit for the Board of Elections. After we received the second quarter invoice and being able to look at that and project that forward through the fiscal year, we notified them that we thought that it might be a little bit less than that, suggested that we might be looking at, in reality, more in the line of a $350,000 deficit. Within the last couple of days, I received information from them that they are officially recording what their projected deficit for us would be at this point as approximately $500,000. So they're giving us a little bit of wiggle room, and as I told them, once we have the third quarter invoice, we'll be much better able to assist them in developing a better projection on that. If you look at what I'm now thinking of as a $350,000 deficit, 2/3 of that is in the overtime line item, which is something that we see every fiscal year because we repeatedly ask for additional funding in that line item and are not given that. And so I don't see anything that is alarming about having a deficit projected at that level, and certainly as we move to the third quarter, getting the third invoice from the state sometime in April, we should be able to nail that down and have some better information for you on that. I should also say, and I apologize for not saying it off the bat, the budget subcommittee did meet with Margaret and Allison and I last week and go over some of this. So if I'm forgetting something that we talked about, Marianne or Nahid, please.
Well, I guess the other issue, and I don't know whether, I mean, it has budget implications, but we might get to it later, is the Mayo meeting in June, and versus the meeting that the state requires that we have.
Right, and so when we met with the subcommittee, we kind of took a little bit more time to clarify. For the last several years, the Mayo meeting has been held in conjunction with the biennial meeting that the board members are required to attend. And so at last month's meeting, when I referenced the fact that the board did not need to attend the Mayo meeting, there was some confusion in that. And what I was specifically alluding to was the Mayo meeting. The Maryland Association of Election Officials is not a required meeting for the board members, although quite often you all do attend, and there are, sometimes topics on the agenda that are specific to the board members. And so there was a little bit of confusion in all of that. This year, the Mayo meeting is being held separate from the biennial. The biennial will be held later in the year. We have made hotel reservations for the Mayo conference because the hotel typically fills up very quickly. And so we do have reservations that will accommodate folks should they choose to attend. And as Margaret mentioned to the subcommittee, we will at the March board meeting have a more finalized agenda for the Mayo meeting so that we can make a determination around that time in March or April. The Mayo meeting is in June, so March or April we'll need to nail down who wants to go to that so that we can either cancel some room reservations or do something with that.
What are the dates? Again?
Allison, can you help me with that? Because I wasn't
June
planning on
6th.
that.
It's the first week in June.
Well, first
Oh, we
week.
actually have it, June 6th through 9. It's on the back of the agenda.
Well,
June 9th.
Same
subsequent,
location?
Ocean City.
Clarion.
Clarion.
But I mean,
Clarion.
is that the same place it was before, a different place?
I haven't been in a couple of years. I think it was.
It's at Clarion.
It's
Yeah.
the Clarion, yeah.
Not at the same place.
Okay.
You were at the Grand.
Okay,
Yeah,
Oh.
This is further going north.
okay.
Clarion.
Subsequent to our budget meeting, Jackie and I and Margaret attended the state board meeting.
Uh-huh.
And I was interested to see that in the administrator's report, she referenced under budget that they apparently have a disagreement with their budget being reduced concerning the biennial meeting. And I think that was the reason that they were having the biennial meeting in their office, so to speak. I mean, in Annapolis.
I see. Okay.
And so they are looking to maybe get monies restored in that area that I think might put the biennial with Mayo. So you probably ought to follow up on that as well and see.
Okay. Well, and certainly, as I mentioned, we do have rooms reserved that would accommodate all the board members if they should choose to do that.
Great.
Okay. The other thing that I wanted to mention, just as it is public information, relates to FY18. The State Board of Elections has put out their proposed budget for the counties for FY18. And for Montgomery County, they're proposing a budget of $2,046,622. When I looked at that, when I received that rather, I did a comparison with what we currently have allocated in our FY18 budget for our state board items, and there's about a $12,000 difference in that, which I don't feel is a major issue at this point. As we all know, the state projections typically come in either much higher or much lower, and so I did notify the Office of Management and Budget that their proposal had come in and told them that at this point I did not feel that the $12,000 needed to be addressed. So if anybody has any questions on anything, I'll be happy to try to answer them for you.
I have one.
Mm-hmm.
How does the overtime amount compare to other years?
Pretty much the same. I mean, I would have to go back and look, but in reality, we have been experiencing overtime in the 400,000s for pretty much every election. And as I mentioned to Nahid and Marianne, I think particularly in a year where we were implementing a new voting system and there were many things that were changing, I think the fact that we kept the overtime to the same level that we have in previous elections was pretty astounding, quite frankly. And so this is not something that I would anticipate the Office of Management and Budget or the County Council to have a major issue with, because it is something that we can go back and show historical spending. And we have, repeatedly asked for more money, and we have been subjected to the Inspector General's review of our overtime expenditures, and they found them completely in line.
When was that?
That was 4 or 5 years ago.
But the other part is that overtime is just not our department exclusively.
I always forget that.
Department of General Services, Police, Recreation, all of these other agencies.
Anything related to the election, you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
They
Comes out of our
charge-
budget?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, anybody who's working for us for the election is charged to us for their overtime, and so the police, the security, technology services who assist in preparation of the electronic poll books, all of those people charge their overtime to our department, and that's between $20,000 and $40,000 for every election.
And is there any ramification to us if they keep approving us at a lower level and we keep recommending a higher level and we keep coming in at the same amount? I mean, Is there someone who gets upset? Does it affect our budget for next year?
No, it does
No.
not.
No.
What
No,
happens
not at
is
all.
we have depicted through graphs, through verbal, one-on-one with the council, that our overtime, we're flat, and 3 months, 1 month, about 6 weeks prior to the election, and the month after the election, where we pyramid up and then we go back down, and our overtime reflects the same patterns of other agencies of county government.
Mike, you had some information for us?
Yeah, and I think Margaret just hit the key issue, that it's flat and it's expected. The solution to that really is hire more people. But when you do that, you're now paying for benefits, and so the cost per person and the budget costs will go up. I mean, could they budget that overtime? Yes, but then it swells the budget. And so I think it's essentially saying, well, we know it's going to be there, we know it's going to happen, and at the end of the year, we'll take it out of the reserves. So it's a deliberate policy. It's deliberate and known ramifications. It doesn't affect the budget at all.
There was enough money in the reserve to cover, you budget enough money into the reserve to cover what you don't put into the budget. And you didn't want to say that.
I'm trying to diplomatically answer
Yeah.
that.
Well,
The reserve is there. The assumption is there are monies for those contingencies. And what happens is you're pushing that expenditure out into the next fiscal year because they need a certain percentage of the budget in the reserves, and it has to be replaced.
I think I could also clarify a little bit. You hear me at the end of each fiscal year, we talk about year-end transfers. That's a phrase you hear me use all the time. And so that is, in a way, what Mr. Subin is referring to. There are departments who will have a surplus at the end of the fiscal year, and there are departments that will have a deficit. And so the surplus departments help the deficit departments, which is why in the years when we have a little bit of a surplus, that's kind of nice. We're, give back. I know. Okay, but it kind of makes up for all the years we're taking from the others. So it is a process that goes through in the county that normally balances everything out.
It's not that it's a complicated process. Mm-hmm. It's fairly easy to understand, but there are several moving pieces to that. I don't know that there's an assumption that they'll be able to take those year-end transfers from folks who have not spent their entire budget, because there is an assumption that what they asked for and got is what they needed. I mean, especially when nobody ever gets what they need. So there are those two pieces and those assumptions. And when I was on the council, I didn't necessarily agree with that policy, but there are reasons for it, and they're rational and they work out. It's like with the fire department typically has an enormous amount of overtime, and they know where it comes from, they know what happens and why it happens. And that's why if you look at, in the same police department, if you look at when they come out with the list of what county employees made what, the folks who make the most are firefighters and police. And all of that is overtime. So, I mean, that's the explanation. It answers the question, which is a legitimate one. Are there any implications or ramifications? And the answer to that is no.
Thanks, Mike. That's good.
Are there any other questions?
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, then going on to voter registration. Jessica, are you here? Oh, there you are. It's pretty quiet, but we are still processing return sample ballots. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Finishing up and finalizing the confirmations for those.
Okay. All right. Then State Board of Elections. First of all, there was a meeting on February 1st held with ES&S, the vendor of the voting equipment, related to the functionality of the high-speed scanner at the local level. All the jurisdictions that had problems were brought in, Montgomery, Prince George's, Howard, Anne Arundel,
Frederick's got the 850.
Frederick, and there's one more. Dan, where's Dan? Anyway, so there was at least 5. I think there were 6. The overall, I think I was disappointed in the meeting. That's my feeling. I'll just put it that way. The company said that the fold created by Runbeck and created in certain local boards of elections, but not our county. The way it was folded by Runbeck created a false overvote, which caused those other jurisdictions to have to flatten the ballots and re-scan them. The lands was scratched in one county, which also created problems. Damage to the timing tracks is something we knew about, but maybe not everyone else did. But it did also create problems. There was considerable discussion about the quality of the Runbeck ballots because of the problems that we had specifically with those ballots and not the other ballots. There was the belief on the part of the local boards that there was something about the quality of those ballots that created a lot of the problems that we had. But when they tested the paper, it met all of ES&S's specifications. So basically what it came back down to was that ES&S is going to be, has recommended their participation to be on the front end of the learning curve and earlier in the cycle instead of as late as they were. Their recommendations to ballot processes will be submitted, standardization of procedures. So basically what that boils down to is how we unfold the ballots and prep them. The company is not as convinced that unfolding them and letting them flatten for a day will improve the quality of scanning. The whole room was quite skeptical of that particular statement. Ballot preparation at the canvas table by all of our canvas teams. Excuse me, I have that cough that just will not go away. Scanning the ballots in configuration, little bugs too. They went through what they believe is the best practice. One of the things that they showed us is that, well, when they were selling us the product, they said it could go in upside down, every other way. Really and truly, they want the ballot to be entered into the scanner a specific way with the pick that pulls the ballot through to get into the white space to improve the scannability of it. Additionally, ES&S is working with the Dell Corporation, which is the guts of the machine, to improve the overall data processing for the uploading of the ballot imaging. So everything that is scanned, whether it's in the polling place or the early voting, an image is taken of that ballot. And then what happens is that scanned image is uploaded from this location to the state board. And then those images are used as part of the clear ballot audit process that we described to you during the certification. the various counties, for us, it took forever. It took literally days to upload the information. Yet other counties that were almost the same size as us were having the information upload much quicker. There was a discussion going on about a corporation in Germany. Do you want to jump in here? Because this is where I'm not as technical as you are. There was a company in Germany that was having these same problems.
The device, the 850 device, is actually manufactured in Germany, and so they had gone to the manufacturer level to address the issues, and we're working with the vendor of the actual hardware of the equipment and the software that forms the guts, I suppose, in order to address but bottom line is digital images of ballots are not, I mean, they're fairly high resolution images and it takes a while to upload, but shouldn't be taking not uniformly long. It shouldn't be quite so variable from county to county, and so they're working
And the other
with
piece
Reeves.
of it was
Then you
that
gotta
it was
lie.
inconsistent.
Right.
They weren't able to explain why to us, at least.
Yeah, and
That's
they
what
still,
they were working with the vendor
and
on.
they still can't explain it.
If I can just interrupt a second, what concerns me in what you've said is when you got to the point that other counties of a similar size didn't have the issue we were having. What do we think that's all about?
That's what ES&S is trying to find out, because size did not matter. Maybe that's what I should have said. Howard County had as many problems uploading, and they're much smaller. They took considerable amount of time to upload these images, and nobody understands why there was this inconsistency. The images were ultimately uploaded, and they were ultimately given to Clear Ballot to do the audit piece of the certification. But the inconsistency has not been resolved, at least on the part of the state's concerns with ES&S and ES&S's concerns with the company and the Dow Corporation.
And we had all exactly the same equipment they had. Our scanners were exactly the same, and everything was exactly the same.
Yes. And then ES&S made a commitment for local board staff training, and then the state board is building in a mock election for the first quarter of next year, of 2018.
Will that be statewide, or are they
Yes.
going to select certain counties?
It will
Or
be statewide. It will be the full election, because obviously one of our big concerns is improved same-day voter registration. That will be part of the mock election. Is that calendar year 18 or FY 18? Calendar year. Wow. Okay. All right. Then SBE also conducted candidate filing training that was held on, I guess it was held on February 9th. Anyway, there were 7 staff that attended the training for the new system, which is now part of MD Voters. Local candidates need to file their ethics reports with the local jurisdictions. State candidates with their state ethics commission. Until those are cured or perfect, the candidate is not technically filed. Local boards are developing and plan to use a checklist. Montgomery County has a link to the finance department for the Montgomery County public campaign financing, and they have developed a frequently asked questions link on their website, so that if a candidate decides to try to utilize public financing, campaign financing, all the questions can be answered there. And then we also, Chris and I, when we were at the state board, met with the project manager, Keith Ross, of the new voting system, and we expressed our concerns about the loss of office movers as the mover of the voting equipment. And they are in the process of developing a new RFP for a logistics company for Montgomery County, as well as the other counties that were served by office movers. We also have met with the County Department of General Services to talk about what they're doing with regards to the replacement of the previous vendor, which was also Office Movers. And that we wanted to make certain that our requirements to deliver the poll books and any other equipment was included, and that to just have somebody who moves furniture, you know, from one room to another, from one site to another, was not the kind of vendor that this department needs. We need someone who knows how to work with us in terms of the logistics of sending out major numbers of pieces of equipment to 230 some plus polling places and 11 early voting centers.
But that's what they've been doing for years and years and years.
Office Movers?
Yeah, they've been moving all our voting
Yeah,
equipment.
now they're out of business.
Oh, I see. They're out of
They went
business.
bankrupt.
What?
Bankrupt.
Yeah, chapter 11.
Yeah, bankruptcy.
John
Yeah,
Kane.
reorganization. He's going to get out of it.
Yeah.
Not all of the businesses that the Kane
Yeah,
zone, but
just this
The
some of
moving,
John's.
Just the moving.
Right
No,
before
John.
the holidays.
Huh?
So it's a significant issue, at least for Montgomery and Prince George's County. And as I understand it, there are several other counties that have them. Then finally, we did have a meeting, or I did end up attending a State Board of Elections meeting on Thursday, February 23rd. It was Thursday. Yeah. Anyway, Mary Ann was there and Jackie. And probably the biggest thing about that particular meeting was the topic of the Spanish translation was discussed with the state board members, which was a topic that was laid over from the previous meeting. And basically, Montgomery County volunteered to work with the state board staff and Prince George's County and the public to revisit the glossary of election terms of art created when using the previous voting system. And the goal is to complete it in this year for the state board members and staff to utilize during the 2018 election cycle. So what happened were there was certain terms of art that were used by the translator, as well as that one of the members of the Prince George's board did not like. And so what I told the board, the state board members, is that the previous system was developed using the past voting system, the touchscreen. And so, and it's, you know, it's just one of those things that kind of slipped through the cracks. No one really looked at the language, the Spanish glossary. So, I haven't seen you to tell you I volunteered to do this.
Are you surprised?
So what we're going to do is sit down with Prince George's, and we're going to look at that glossary of terms. Some of it means we have to change some instructions on the actual voting, the scanners, and see if we can do that. But and then of course on the actual ballot. But and hopefully get everything wrapped up by the end of November and no later. So that, because we have like 3 to 10 days, depending on how quickly the ballot is given to us to proof and prepare. And while we do try to get it to the board members before it's finalized, the fact of the matter is that we have a legal deadline that is no squeeze to it at all. So we have to have ballots 45 days.
We didn't get it to the day off. You guys didn't get it to like a couple of days before. You guys didn't even have 10 days.
That's part of the problem. And you asked about overtime. That's one of the overtime problems. Is we get it as soon as we get it. Chris is all prepared. We have proofing packets. We have the ballot marking device, proofing that we have to do, the paper, obviously the optical scan ballot, and those are the two, right?
And the sample ballot at the same time.
The sample ballot at the same time. And we have to do the English and Spanish, and we have to do the audio. So we have to basically proof 3 ballots in a very short period of time. So what I expressed to the state board members is that, you know, we're always looking for people to provide us input, but once the ballot's printed, it's printed. And so the better time to approach this translation issue is to do it far in advance, and then these terms of art. Now, the thing is, and in Montgomery County's case, Montgomery County Attorney's Office is very possessive of they translate their own language. They're not interested in the state doing it, and they're not interested in this department doing it. They translate, they use their own translator, and I sometimes take the information that the state's translator to Mr. Hansen, and Mr. Hansen says, thank you very much, but we'll take the language that we have given you, and that's appropriate.
Is that for
Prince George's County does not do that. They rely on the state to translate it.
Is that for everything on the ballot or just for
No,
ballot questions?
Just the ballot
Ballot
questions.
questions.
Okay.
Just their ballot
Their
questions.
ballot questions.
Their ballot questions.
So if it was a voter initiative, they don't feel as possessive?
The state,
No, the county, is the county attorney wanting to do this for all ballot
Yes.
questions or just the ones that are proposed by the county government?
just anything that's, if it's a referendum
Yeah.
or a county,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and if I know that the county council is part of that process, and they also have something to say about the language.
Right.
But Montgomery County controls their own translation.
Right.
Okay, they're not interested in the state's translation. And then we got into this whole discussion about dialects, which I am very familiar with from the very beginning when we first had the introduction of the Spanish mandate, and Mr. Perez was on the council demanding, or was he even on the council then? Yeah, and he had certain requirements, and we've paid attention to that issue. So that's one of our goals, is that it'll be all wrapped up, hopefully by no later than November 1st.
I have a question about the involvement of, you mentioned that you were going to get the community involved.
Mm-hmm.
How do you intend to do that?
Do a meeting. Well, what I'm going to do is I'll sit down with Roberto and then talk to Janine Banks from Prince George's County, and then obviously we'll be talking to you and talking to the Prince George's County board member, try to come up with a couple of meetings, and then to develop the terms of art, look at what we have, look at what the EAC has, see where there's agreement, and then these ones that seem to expand beyond the ones that were identified in this report, an act of the county charter or something like that. We can develop language, and then as I said, when we did this before, we had everything from the World Bank employee who speaks Spanish. Save me here when you think I'm not describing this, to the Central American landscape person. That, I mean, we have a cross section, and again, the other piece of it is we are supposed to be developing a ballot. This is that's where I said some of the English language is bad, to a 4th grade reading level. Because even the English translation of some of the constitutional amendments and issues that are on the ballot are difficult for people to read.
As Margaret said, and I think, we're both in agreement. We were so glad Margaret was there, because they were really looking to Montgomery County on this issue, because of course we do have the most experience, and Margaret certainly was able to bring a lot more detail to the history of what we had done. I will say that Kelly Howes, the state board member, is all over this issue, and she really is very concerned by it and felt it was extremely important. I think, if I'm not wrong, haven't we found a lot of the problems at our end from those translations that are related to ballot issues? And it seems to me that one of the things we're going to have to do in this county is have a meeting with the county attorney and whoever is designated in his office to get them on board with this. But I don't think they can just do this themselves in a vacuum that doesn't involve whatever we're putting together here from the election aspect of it. And I think that my understanding of the group to get together to initiate this and start looking into it is a combination of both staff of the two, of Prince George's and Montgomery, as well as our board members who have the knowledge of the languages. And
well, if I didn't say that, I'm sorry, because I thought it was really clear from the state board members that they wanted the local board members that spoke Spanish to be involved, and I don't have any problem with that.
What about meeting with the county attorney and trying to
well, I think,
make sure we use the same glossary?
We'll certainly work with the county attorney and present after the work is done and present everything that's been presented. Again, though, when I looked at this material that had been identified by these were Prince George's issues, not necessarily. I did not look at the language that was on our county.
And we didn't get any complaints from anybody, did we?
Well, I remember I had given my complaints to you at that time, and a couple of them are the same. Like the referendum was one of them. The at-large that I felt that was not. It wasn't translated clearly, and it kind of gave the opposite way of when you look at it, and I think it was confusing to some people when they looked at it. So I think one of the, and Gilberto, you know this, that we're now blessed to have a bilingual university in Montgomery County. It's the only bilingual university in the country, and they have gone through great lengths to make sure that their material is able to be used by people from Central America, to South America, and so on. And I know a few of the professors, including the head of the Spanish language department at University of Maryland. She has written a few books on translation, the right way of doing it. So we have some really great folks locally that we probably didn't have preview to it before, that I think could be very useful for this group.
Did we have any negative feedback at all?
Sure. We
From
do get
voters?
complaints, but when we get, not on, yes and no, the different language we get complaints on, but the times when we get the least complaints, from what I've seen in the last several years, has been the times that we've really been able to workshop language with multiple speakers of multiple dialects and people in the office who know what we're trying to communicate, and they can say, the idioms, the sort of expressions that we use, that how we can say them in ways that are clear. Quite frankly, a lot of the time, if we say them differently in English too, we start looking at the way that some Spanish expression is being phrased, and then we say, well, that's because it's sort of a convoluted way we're phrasing it in the English, and then we're trying to make it, in the Spanish, it comes out even more convoluted. So when we take the time, and when we have the time, we make the time to be able to work out, it's definitely time intensive when we're working with a sample ballot. Now this time, where we got the complaints, it was on the local questions, and it was on the language from the county attorney's office.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember there were, missing accents, and there were definitely complaints about that. generally speaking, though, I don't think we've gotten more complaints in the past about some of our own work, particularly in the sample ballot before. I think this time it was better. Where the complaints were, I think, was in that.
But the other piece of it is that from the very beginning, I mean, one of the things that's happened in terms of the language of the ballot as well as the language of the sample ballot is that there is a national push, and I've talked about it before, where at one time, you know, the sample ballot and the language was devised for someone who had an 8th grade reading capability, and now we're being pushed to develop anything that we're going to utilize, having a lot of white space, making sure that we're developing and using language, Spanish and English, at a 4th grade reading level. So from 2002, since the time that we were notified that we've had to change the way we develop the language of the ballot. So I think this is a perfect time to look at this once again and say, okay, we have a new voting system, we're using paper predominantly, this is the time to do it.
Not just Spanish, English too, right?
Yeah.
But the language, like the question B, question C, I don't think even if you have a high school degree, you can understand it.
I said the exact same thing.
You have to have a law degree. I don't think even law degree would be enough.
So, but our goal is to have this, at least on the local level, completed by November, so that the state can do what it needs to do. Because all of these language terms, all of these terms of art have to be entered into the electionware ballot development system, ballot definition system. So vote for one, vote for four, vote for whatever. It needs to be entered into that system, which we have no control. We don't touch.
Just two quick things. Candidates are starting to call me. We have nothing to do with the public financing, just refer them to...
That is correct.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Do we have forms here for them?
No.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Okay.
Nobody gave us
link
any
on our
money.
website, right?
We have,
So they go to the County Department of Finance for everything.
there's a frequently asked question that answers many of the questions. It's on our website, front page, front and center. They should read through that, and then that will direct them as to whether they need to go to the Department of Finance or if they need to go over to the State Board of Elections.
Or call 311.
And any discussion at the board meeting about the internet-generated ballots that we have to duplicate? Any
Yes.
software that
actually,
might eliminate us duplicating?
Actually, I think Mary Ann and David.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
Any
brought the
discussion
information.
about the internet ballots that we have to duplicate? Is there any effort to get software
Yeah.
to
I
scan
think-
them?
Why not? I think Mary Ann and David are ahead of this game on this one. So
Only because we ran into Rich Madalena,
Yes, that's right.
you know, who's
Is he sympathetic?
he's very sympathetic as a result of
Well,
having
when he
been
was
here
here,
to
he
witness
was
it.
That's right.
He is very sympathetic, but he indicated that the state board discussed an upcoming RFP. I don't remember what the timing was of the RFP.
It was at a hearing, at one of his
It was
hearings.
his hearings in Budget and Tax
Yeah.
in Annapolis, that the state board said they're going to have an RFP soon. I don't know if it already happened or not.
Yes, it is. It's
Um,
already out there.
For a device that would help to count those ballots.
Is that the clear vote device?
It's not.
No.
No.
To scan the ones that we have to duplicate.
Right. Runback,
That'd be great.
it would be a vendor comparable to Runback. Obviously, Runback can also develop
That would be great.
proposal for
It's a
to
software.
Yeah.
They have
But
to-
what it does is, there's, did you sit in on that Catherine's phone call? It was in it.
Yeah, but I'm not sure I'm ready to characterize how it works because I
Yeah.
have my own questions. You know,
Yeah,
not
we-
only their software, but how it works in relationship to our regulations. And I think the state board needs to kind of look at our procedures right along with the actual technology and make sure we can make this work in a way that isn't just as cumbersome, but, you know, using electronic eyes and hands instead of human ones.
So the state is developing an RFP that supposedly is going to be broadcast out very soon or hit the streets.
I
very
think it
soon.
is, Margaret.
Yeah, it
Because
could be.
I talked to Linda at the end of the meeting, And if I heard her right, she said that it's out there.
Oh, okay.
And she said that there were a couple of states in the West. I don't know whether that's Oregon, Washington, maybe could it be Arizona? I don't know, but that are using a system, and so she thinks that they will get it. I also asked about the all-important money for something like that. You know, who's going to have to pay or what? And she said that she thought it was in their state budget to pay for it.
Now, is this something we would have here and use, or would the state have it and would have to transmit those ballots to the state?
No, I'm sure it would have to be
Here.
So there's more than one, there would be more than one machine.
Yes.
And we hope.
You know, we started asking for 2 scanners 4 years ago.
But yeah.
So 3 years ago.
So we're not looking
Well,
for
if we can
18.
if we can get a copy of the RFP, maybe some of these questions are answered in it,
Certainly.
you know.
That's good.
Sorry. Legislation is the next topic, and that is Allison.
Okay. I have a handout. I'm sorry for the handing it out now, but this is all, I just tried to condense basically the information you can get yourself if you go to the General Assembly website. When you go to the General Assembly website, you do an elections legislation search, you pull up, I think, about 80 bills, and what I've done here is just to try to squish together information on, I think there's 23 on this chart. And then I've put in the chart what the Mayo position is, what the May-Go position is, and what positions the board has taken to this point. It's 23 bills here. I know we have a couple other topics to talk about, so I don't want to belabor this and spend the next hour going point by point. What I think I'm going to do is go ahead and start I'll hit some highlights of this and where I think there are questions, but feel free to interrupt me as we go. I'll just quickly run through them.
Will you merge into that
And then we can talk about the email that I sent about the meeting that Marianne and Jackie and I had about some topics that are not. There's a little bit of overlap.
I was going to say, aren't there some involved in these bills? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
There's
more
overlap.
than that we talked the last meeting, which is already in our minutes?
There's a whole bunch more bills that have been introduced since we met, and even since when Jackie and Marianne and I met. So, the first update, House Bill 73, the very first one in your chart, that was considered by the Election Law Subcommittee in the House, and they did strip all of the language having to do with election judge stipends. So right now, that is a bill that speaks specifically just having 16-year-olds serve as election judges. The board is on record opposing it as introduced. Do you want to talk and consider whether that's still your position now, or should I just keep going through and do an update and then we can come back to any actions afterwards?
That's the board.
I'll keep going.
Yeah.
Are we coming back to it though in the end?
That's up to you.
You have 2 major reports, so if it depends, it's up to you. Do you want to discuss it?
Do you want to consider these one by one, or do you want me to
But she said it was amended, so would that change our position?
I haven't seen the language of it, but I'm told.
She haven't seen anything. What she
I
can
thought
do
the amendment took out the tying it to the minimum wage.
Yeah, I thought that was the amendment too.
What I was told, Stuart Harvey spoke to the staff, and that all of the language having anything to do with how much we pay election judges was completely stripped out of the bill. That now it's just 16-year-olds.
Well,
So it's only dealing with
Right.
the age issue,
Right.
not the pay
Right.
issue.
And
That's what I was
I
told.
believe Marianne and I were a minority on that one, on that particular bill. It was 3-2. So the real question is whether it makes a difference to the people who are in the majority, because obviously if we were given the chance to vote on that, I would still suggest that we not oppose it, whether it would be supporting it or taking no position.
All right. Well, I'll keep going through then, and then if anybody wants to give motions, now in the future, feel free. I've got nothing new on the next couple of bills. There's been no change other than the fact that the bills were heard. There are a couple of constitutional amendments here on the list on various topics. Mayo historically doesn't really weigh in on those. The question's either going to be in the ballot or it's not. And so the Mayo category is pretty consistently going to say no position. I will draw your attention to the fact that NACO has taken a position in opposition to it's on the second page, House Bill 345 and Senate Bill 423 regarding same-day registration. So I'll just draw your attention to that fact. House Bill 348 was not on the previous list of bills that you looked at, but it was a Montgomery County delegation bill that would allow the Montgomery County Council to have the authority to stagger terms of office for members of the County Council. The House Bill 353, which this group did look at before, I want to draw your attention to the fact in the synopsis you see a two-line amendment. The sponsor has circulated an amendment that this is the bill that provides for notice both before and after the local boards of elections change in administrative policy. I'm still not sure how administrative policy is defined, but there is language now that says where practicable, and there is language that removed part that some folks expressed concern about that said including a person acting under color of law. So this board is on record opposing that. Mayo originally was as well. Mayo has changed from opposed to no position in light of the amendments. There's a couple more here on special elections to fill a vacancy in office.
What does word color of law mean?
I think I probably should defer to the attorneys in the room to answer that question better than I can.
By the way, where is Kevin?
It means that somebody has taken an action in an official position that violated somebody's civil rights. I think one of the best ways to look at that is law enforcement officers in the South and actions they would have taken in conjunction with the Ku Klux Klan.
Thank you.
There's another couple of bills here on voter eligibility, proof of identity, proof of citizenship. Those are bills that Mayo, voter qualifications bills, Mayo generally just takes a pass at and doesn't take a position one way or the other on. There's a bill here to change the, I don't know if this is necessarily so much in the province here of this board, but there is a bill to change all of the House legislative districts from multi-member districts to single-member districts. There is a bill, this one I testified on behalf of Mayo on, and I would really like to know this group's
What is the bill number?
views
You get the
on
number.
it.
Yeah, what number?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Those bills were, the proof of identity, proof of citizenship bills were House Bill 532, Senate Bill 1133, and House Bill 539. The bill to shrink the size of the House of Delegates was House Bill 535.
It doesn't shrink the size.
Well, that's not an election law, Bill.
No, it's the same number of districts. It's the shrink. It's the change from triple member district to single member district.
Single member districts.
But that's not election law, though.
Maybe that shouldn't even be on the list.
No.
I don't think that.
House Bill 619 and Senate Bill 882. I actually testified on this on behalf of Mayo,
No, the signs.
but I would like to know if any members of this board have strong views on it. This right now, those campaign signs, the polling places, the schools, the private facilities must allow campaign signs to start going up at 7 p.m.
Right.
They may let them go up earlier, but they're not required to. There's a bill to change that time to 4 p.m. As a body, Mayo was pretty strongly opposed to that, and I actually carried the testimony on that in one chamber. But my understanding is that now the sponsor is proposing that a compromise of 5 p.m. That basically you wait until after private business hours for the most part, and then allow the campaign signs to go up. The thinking is that an increased number of the school kids are going to be out of the facility by 5 o'clock than at 4 o'clock. The general discussion seems to be that people are feeling better about a 5 o'clock compromise. I don't know how this group feels about what exact time. The schools, because one of the things I said was that they really needed to kind of work this one out with the schools, since the schools are, most of our polling places. And my understanding is that the schools have not weighed in, so
It
I'm
really
not
doesn't
sure.
make that much difference for
We care
1
more than they
hour.
do.
We don't have any
It's
position.
2 hours, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just-
It's from 7 to 5.
Was 7 to 4, now apparently they're talking 7 to 5.
And what is the problem that the schools have with the signs being there when?
My understanding is that the biggest concern other folks on the Mayo Legislative Committee were raising was the buses getting in and out, the kids being outside of the schools milling around.
After-school activities.
The
After-school activity bus usually comes at 4:45.
The transportation, the activity bus seems to be more the concern to people than, protecting children's eyes from what might be on the sign.
And you think that's well? I thought maybe a little bit of mischief too, if taking the signs away or something. But speaking from the experience of our going around to the polling places the night before, almost all those places have after school going to 6 o'clock. Because when I get to schools at 6 o'clock, there are still kids there and they're wrapping up their after school.
I don't pick up my son until 6:30.
A lot of the schools have aftercare, which is rented out by the ITV. So usually it's till 7. A lot of the aftercare. So.
But that doesn't involve the school buses and things. That I guess is the concern. Is that those are gone? Or?
So I gather. I don't know.
As a practical matter for us, our judges may be there at 7 o'clock and won't be there at 5 o'clock. And if there are questions that arise as to where signs can be placed, it might be better to have the judges there, although admittedly they have other things to do as well. But certainly we've all had the situation, I know I have, where we show up at a polling place and find that signs have been placed in places that they can't be or shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's true.
And then we have to deal with it, which can be hard.
Do you think this is an issue for a Board of Elections? Signage?
Mayor take no position.
Is that something that we would...
I think absent
it's the polling place that
They
we're
move it
responsible for.
earlier.
Nobody's asked for our opinion, have they?
absent this body weighing in otherwise and saying that you do care strongly, the impression I get is that folks are likely to sort of compromise on a 5 o'clock time and move on to the next issue. But
Mayor take no position.
No. Oh, I see. They just changed it to no position.
Yeah.
Because it was 5 o'clock instead of 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yes, so they're...
At 5, they have no position.
it's up to this board to decide whether you want to weigh in on it, or whether the current trajectory
Is it
okay.
likely to go anywhere?
I can't answer that question.
Okay.
I don't know.
This is statewide, right?
Yeah.
It's a state law.
The next one, and then you can think on that, and maybe any of the earlier ones you want to make any motions on, change views on. House Bill 741, Senate Bill 938. This is a bill well, not exactly, but it's a concept you've certainly seen before. Automatic voter registration. You'll recall that last year the legislature identified a group of state agencies and designated them as electronic voter registration agencies, that they needed to basically go to an MVA style, getting the data to us electronically. What this does is take those same agencies and say, no, you're not just offering voter registration, and you're not just required to offer it and give the voter or the customer the ability to opt in or out. You are going to automatically register them at the point of that transaction unless they opt out. And so you would see, the increase in the number of individuals being registered and being registered as unaffiliated unless they explicitly opt out or unless they affirmatively volunteer party affiliation to this.
Allison, let me ask you a generic question. Does Mayo speak for the local boards of elections? In other
Mayo-
words, is that an organization that speaks for us?
Mayo speaks for the local boards of elections. The members of the legislative committee are the directors and deputies of the board. So Margaret and I go to the legislative committee and we argue on behalf of whatever positions you have directed us to, or in the interim we talk it through based on our professional judgment between meetings.
But if Mayo takes a position for, and we have taken a position against,
If Mayo's taken a position for and you take a position against, then what happens is that Margaret or I go and we pop off an email to the rest of the members and we say, guys, we think you need to, our board feels really strongly about this. We think you need to reconsider this. And then we have another conversation about it.
But we will always represent the board's position
this
before the committee.
Yes.
Thank you, that was my question.
And we will and we can and we have, the group positions evolve over time. There's a couple of bills. House Bill 1056 is on page 5 that we're on, and then actually at the very end, Senate Bill 744 is another one that are bills to take various offices and put them on the primary election ballot, nonpartisan offices, and then have sort of a top two set up to advance to the general election. There's a couple of bills on that. Mayo's taking no position at this point.
Isn't that a constitutional amendment kind of thing? Because they're elected by parties now. I think it's to change the Constitution.
Go back to the bill and look and see if that is a constitutional amendment. I'm not
Well, they're making these local offices nonpartisan.
right. I have to go back and look.
Yeah.
House Bill 1354 and Senate Bill 842 are bills on how we handle information that we get from the jury commission about voters who are not citizens, or who tell the jury commission that they can't serve in a jury because they're not a citizen. We get that information now, but this would require them to give it to us within 5 days, and then among other things, it requires the state to publish on its website the number of individuals who are removed in that manner. House Bill 1605, we get to an overlap with some of what we've talked about earlier. As you will recall, there is Senate Bill 406, which is ahead of us on page 7, to require 2 scanners at every polling place, require the state to make arrangements for counties to receive 2 scanners for every polling place in Prince George's County. We've had some previous discussions about getting Montgomery County in on that as well. There has subsequently been a bill introduced by members of the Baltimore County delegation seeking the same thing. This is House Bill 1605.
Mayor says support, we support it too.
So, this particular bill, 1605, had not yet
Won't they
come
combine
up.
those bills?
Let me get through my review, and then did the board members all get a copy of this draft letter in their packet?
Yeah.
So then we'll
was
skip
sent
ahead
to
to
us
that letter
too.
in a minute.
It was sent to us.
We have talked about Senate Bill 58. This is Senator Kagan's bill on election observers. The text of the amendment that Senator Kagan has to her bill is here included in the chart this time. Mayo has changed its position from being opposed to no position.
Why?
Because the first version of the bill was effectively allowing out-of-state individuals, academic institutions in particular, to designate election observers who would have the right to go to a polling place without really even checking with us or the state board on it. And then as amended, the bill would require those individuals to at least go through the state board in order to appoint election observers. But this does not.
It takes it out of our
This does
hands
not
completely.
speak to the question that I know you and Mary Ann had talked about and circulated to the rest of the board about that concern about expanding who's able to request voter registration.
But it takes it out of our hands. The local board?
It does, actually, as written, it does take it out of our hands.
It does.
Because they can go straight to the state board, although I think in order to get designated, one can really go to the state board now.
Absolutely.
So, it's probably in their best interest to talk to Margie first before they go picking a polling place.
Can you go to the state board, Margie, and object? Can you say, here are people we've turned down in case they show up there?
There are times, I have never done that. There are times when, in this last election, we had a couple instances where Kevin and I had a conversation, and then I would contact the state because we weren't quite sure exactly what somebody was trying to do and whether it really was something we wanted them to do. And I think that it was an institution it was an educational institution that was not affiliated with a candidate or a political party. Typically, the ones that go to the state to get to be an observer they have to be affiliated with a political party or a candidate. And so the state was saying that because this group is not affiliated with a political party or a candidate, then it's up to you to decide how you're going to handle it. And so they were wanting to be in the polling place all day without anybody there. And, we just don't do that. We just don't do that. So that was where the discussion was. So
what happened?
And this new category of election observers would be able to hang out in the
would be able to hang out, and it would put it back to the state. So what this would do is it would increase the state's ability to allow people in the polling places.
And we get no say in it.
Well, if the state issues a challenger, watcher, or an observer certificate to someone, I haven't read this. I don't know, but I don't think that we can say no.
When we go through our thing, we raised issues on this, and in fact, I'm sorry Kevin isn't here because a couple of these we said we needed legal, advice on.
I think that's a serious issue. I think we could have people running around inside polling places that, you could have 10 people. I think that's a serious issue.
All right. Well, on most of the bills on page 7, we've already talked about, and I have no further updates on. I have 2 more bills. One, Senate Bill 711 is a vote by mail bill. We'd be mailing out a ballot to everyone, and then we would have not only by mail, but we would also have ballot return locations, in-person return locations for the ballot. In the hearing, I was over on the House side while this was being heard on the Senate side, but I'm told that there was discussion that the sponsor intends to completely rewrite the bill in terms of the mechanics of it. So I'm not sure how much, by describing the mechanics of how it's written now, I'm not sure what it's going to look like once they talk to the state board and probably, talk to us and come back out with that. But I think, there's been vote by mail bills before, and I think this is a continued evolution of that discussion. And then the very last bill on this chart, Senate Bill 960, and we've seen this before as well. In fact, we've had members of our delegation co-sponsoring bills on this before, to require us to report our voting results not only for election day, but also early and absentee by precinct, which can certainly be done, and it's done that way in a lot of states. The way that we are currently administering our elections, however, the only way we could break out early voting results by precinct is if we had a unique ballot style for every single precinct. So you would have a ballot style for every single precinct that's Republican, that's Democratic, that's unaffiliated.
In the primary.
Unless we get touchscreens, set up to be able to print those ballots individually and still program them, we'd have to have individual ballot styles. So the main thing we need to work through right now is either getting some kind of a touchscreen set up going at early voting, or having a bank of paper ballot styles at every early voting location that the election judges will be pulling from.
Close to 1,000 for the primary.
So I know that's a lot to think about. The last time the board took up legislation, the legislative discussion, we also had a conversation about some concepts, ideas, issues that were not reflected in current legislation. And you'd asked me to work with board members, Marianne and Jackie, and I got together to talk these through. There were 5 issues that we talked about. One of which was whether voters ought to be able to, and we've got this discrepancy right now in how address changes are handled. When you show up at early voting, versus when you show up on election day. If you show up on election day, you don't need to show any ID in order to change your address and have your provisional ballot counted. If you show up during early voting, that is considered a same-day registration. And so in order to do a change of address during early voting, even if you're previously registered, you need to provide proof of residence or that provisional ballot is rejected. And so when Mary Ann and Jackie got together, should I carry this conversation or does one of the two of you want to go through these?
Go ahead.
That's perfectly fine. Just please, David was also, had volunteered to be part of that.
Yes.
But so as not to violate the,
Open meetings.
thank you, open meetings rule.
I did not participate in that
He
meeting.
did not, he
Right.
did not
But
participate
we spoke
in the
nicely
meeting.
of you, Dave.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So if I can characterize what Mary Ann and Jackie both brought forward as a recommendation, is that whatever the requirements are for ID or proof of residence for voters, that they ought to be the same for all voters, whether they're voting early or on election day. And there may be disagreement on what those requirements ought to be, but whatever they are, they should be the same. The second issue was
Well, are we going to take these up for purposes of the board taking positions, or?
do you want me to just run through them like I did the bills, and then you can take positions on any or all of them?
As you go.
I think we should
Yeah,
do
I
them
think
as
we should
we
just
as we see
Well,
them.
Okay,
we're
that's
gonna-
fine.
We're going to do the ones that they reviewed or all of them? We're not going to do all these, are we?
It's entirely up to you.
We're just going to do the ones that you and Jackie did, right?
You can agree with these, you can disagree with these,
Well,
you
we
can
have
choose to
some.
discuss them.
We have
Well,
some
and
where the
there's some
language,
that we
where the
were going to
language
go back
changed.
to on here.
Oh, okay.
But these, since we've worked a little further on it from discussion from the previous board meeting,
And some we
I would think
give us
we-
some language on.
yeah.
So do you want to?
So you'll take position on the first issue?
So I guess there are two issues here on this
yes.
one. It's first of all, what is the thinking in terms of should there be two different ways to handle change of address? One during regular voting and one during early voting, or do you think that they should be the same requirement, whichever time you vote?
Are we aware of any rationale for the difference, or was it simply accidental?
They happened separately, as I remember. It said just different time.
I think it's because the confusion came in because same-day registration took place during early voting.
Right.
And so when a voter came to the poll book to check in, and it was determined that they had a change of address, they had been a registered voter, but they had a change of address, all those people were being sent to the same-day registration
I think it was a
table.
drastic error.
And at the same day registration, of course, you did need identification to register.
No, I'm familiar with that.
So that's where it came about.
I'm not sure it was fully understood by all parties
Right.
that you could, at present, change your address without having to provide
Right.
proof of
It
residence.
just makes sense to have them both the
That's it.
same.
I agree.
Yeah.
Can we agree on which one we're following? Because
The general
I was going to say I would follow the general election because I think early voting should be as close to the general election as possible.
Well, and since that's really the way it's been done,
For a long time.
for a long time. So anytime you went to vote, and you needed to change your address, that it was changed.
That created a lot of confusion.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you need a
So,
motion?
motion-
Everybody
We need a
agree
vote.
with that just in general?
Yeah.
Everybody agrees
sense.
with they do it the way they do it in the general
Do
election?
we need a motion?
Yes, I think we do.
So moved.
Okay, I move.
Okay, fine. Second.
Great.
So,
Any discussion?
so
All those in favor?
Aye.
Move
No,
on.
you discuss.
okay, I'll find a way to artfully word what I think you just told me, and then you can look at it and tell me if that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It's going to be the same.
Okay.
It's going to be the same
General election.
without the requirement to provide the proof as has been done in the general election.
Got it. Okay, issue 2, whether, because right now, same-day registration is available during the early voting window of time. It is not available at our office because we do not designate our office as one of the early voting locations. In those counties where their office is one of their locations, you can do same-day registration over their counter. In our county, because our facility is not great for that, you can't. And so the recommendation here was that same-day registration should be available over the counter at the Board of Elections for absentee voters during the same dates and hours as same-day registration and early
Okay,
voting.
Margaret, what's
Good.
your position?
Yeah, what's your thought, Margaret?
I've been in favor of this from the very beginning.
She's always
So you can handle it.
Okay.
That again,
You can handle
just
it.
made sense to us. If
Yes.
people walk in here, you give them an absentee ballot.
because it's a board of
Okay.
elections. You're doing
All right,
it
then,
anyway.
that's your position.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
We have to vote? All
Yep.
those,
Mhm.
all those in favor?
I move.
Aye.
Who moves?
Okay, Jackie moves, who seconds?
Naheed.
Great.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Who seconded?
Okay.
I
Naheed,
second.
no.
Issue 3 was
I know you're excited.
whether-
You seconded for me.
I can't.
You can second.
I can't.
whether the board ought to be in a position to open absentee ballot envelopes on or before Election Day. As you'll remember from the prior discussion, Maryland is actually the only state in the country where you have to wait until after Election Day to begin opening those envelopes. After we discussed that, the recommendation here is that Montgomery County should be authorized to open ballots before Election Day, provided that the process is open to the public, one board member of each political party is present, and no results may be printed for release until the polls close on Election Day. That would be fairly typical with how a lot of other states do it.
How do you do that? How do you open them and have it be transparent and yet not provide results at the same time?
Everybody wouldn't be doing it. You and I would be doing it on Tuesday from 10 to 3, and Mary Ann and Jim and Naheed and Alex would be doing it on Thursdays and Wednesdays or some such thing like that. We might know we might see how many were on 50, but that wouldn't give us any results.
Can I just want to comment. Both Jessica and I come from states that open ballots prior to Election Day. And basically what you do is you slit the envelope open, you unfold it according to the ES&S profile, and you place it in a box and allow it to flatten over a period of time. You would say that this is batch 1 of 50, and the envelopes that go with batch 1 would be inserted with the actual ballots, and then they would just be allowed to settle, which would improve the scannability.
Yeah,
Now,
okay.
given the resources that we put into this now, do we have the resources to spare before the election when people may be involved in election preparation?
Yes, we would.
How do we do that?
We would have to plan it just like we do everything else. Quite honestly, I don't understand why Maryland is so far behind the times with regards to comparison to that.
Okay, but for example, when we do the absentee opening now, we use a lot, for the most part, we're using either our staff or election judges who are here after the election, who we obviously need to be, I guess it depends. Before Election Day, we have training for them, we have pickup for them. On Election Day, we have activities for them. I guess my question is, I'd be worried about diverting them from other election preparation activities in order to open ballots. And I'm concerned about the same thing for our staff. I mean, it seems that there's a lot that goes into preparing for the election.
But this is a long time before.
Does it say when they start opening?
Well, it depends. In the
No,
state
we
of
didn't.
Nebraska, you started opening the day before on Monday. Kansas,
From the day you started mailing 21 days out.
What is this?
21 days
We
out.
didn't start mailing until 21 days, and you could start processing as soon as they were returned.
But
What does
we
it say
mail
here?
around
Is
now,
We have a special board.
we
right?
mail out
The
45 days.
language that Marianne and Jackie, they didn't answer that
We
question.
didn't we kicked around a variety of ideas, doing it once you have, 1,000 ballots or something, and realistically, I think it probably needs to be something that moves closer to Election Day.
We thought it was a really good idea because of everything
Oh, yeah.
involved.
The whole
And actually,
country is
I
doing
think we decided that maybe the staff should come up with a couple of plans, and that would work.
I'm saying if
and
the whole
then we talk
country
about
is
it
doing
a little
it,
later.
if the whole country is doing, we are behind it. Why not
Well,
do it?
Exactly.
the country's doing a number of things that we wouldn't necessarily
I
agree
mean,
with.
state of Maryland, we are in a different
Time zone.
time
Yeah,
zone.
but a lot of places like
Or
this,
the
all
new
they do
stuff,
is mail
the
in.
new
They don't have people
star
actually
they
going
just
to.
discover. I mean,
You know, a lot of these
what's the
states
problem?
like
Good concept.
like Washington, Seattle, so they do mail in. They don't have like 250 plus precincts like we do that we have to
Yeah.
prepare for. So it's not the same thing. So I like the idea because I think it could give us,
Yeah.
going a lot quicker.
Yeah.
But remember what we're doing the night before. We're running around the precincts, making sure everything is set for
And,
the
and,
actual
and,
election.
and,
that.
and
They're
so are
doing
you.
So if
And
there,
so is the staff.
so if
maybe more
there-
so.
So if there would
And
be
so are other states
Right.
and other staff.
So
in
there would be
other
a way for the staff to give us a couple of proposals on how to start this.
Exactly.
Not maybe the day before, but actually how to do it in a systematic way prior to, I don't know, 2 weeks prior to the election.
That would be, it seems to me that would be
And-
part of the proposal we'd get from the staff, is we could start a proposal with 3 weeks out and 1 week out, or whatever they come up with, and how many staff they would see from their past experience of how many come in, that we can't sit here and
Yeah.
plan that.
Is there legislation currently pending to do this?
There's not.
No. Do we need
This,
legislation for
this
that?
whole list of
We're not talking this year.
issues was.
If we're not talking this year, why are we talking today?
Yeah, why we're just talking?
Yes.
Well,
Why
when are you
talking
going to
if
talk?
it's not
I mean,
yet?
legislation?
because if you can't get it in this year, then it's something that we might be able to get in next year. It would not obviously be in place for the 2018, but it would be for 2020.
Right.
So I think any of these to start
And
moving
some of
them.
these might be regulation as opposed to
Right.
legislation.
Well,
So we need to find that out.
all I'm saying is that we have quite a few details to work out on this. We don't have a legislative deadline for this year that we're dealing with.
No, we
I
don't.
personally would prefer to see what the details are before I vote
Which
on
is
it.
exactly, David, why
Yeah.
I suggested we
Yeah.
give it to the staff as a proposal, so
Okay.
that for
Yeah.
them to come up.
Okay, great.
But I think we should
Okay.
start it, the process, because it is going to take time.
Okay.
Did that go on there?
Yes.
Erase it.
So you want the staff to do what? Are you asking us to come to you with a proposal?
Yeah.
Yes.
Proposals of.
We like the concept, but
Yeah, possibilities.
So we just want the practicum of it, how
Great.
it's going
All right, let's go.
to look like.
Great. Next one is the issue of these, what we call the E40 voters, the folks who get us more than one envelope with a ballot in it. And we talked through these scenarios, like in particular the question on the table was when you've got a voter who returns an absentee ballot, and then for whatever reason they're not sure their ballot's going to get back, whatever it is, they also then go to the polls on election day, vote a provisional ballot. You get both of these ballots and you have to reject them both, and then the voter gets a nice little letter saying that they should not have attempted to vote twice.
Right.
In discussing this through, I think the consensus of the board members present was a concern that we not go to a point where we're encouraging voters to start returning us multiple ballots.
Right.
And changing their vote if it is.
Right.
That's the big deal.
When we discussed this, we looked at the law. We had it. Allison pulled it up, and we read what the law said, as well as looking at the regulations, and there was definite some confusion in this, because on the one hand, of course, you can never vote twice. However, people that vote 2 absentee ballots, the most recent absentee ballot is counted, and that's in the law.
Yeah, right.
So
So if there's 2 absentee ballots, the most recent one is counted,
Yeah.
but if it's a provisional and
but if it's an absentee and a
they both go-
provisional,
And
they
that's-
all
That
get
makes
thrown out.
And that's why we had the issue, remember, with some of them.
It's in the
When
same
Kevin
category as a
explained
change of
it.
address.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it's not consistent.
So this is, I mean, this is something that they really do have to tackle, because as it currently exists, I just see it as very problematic. And that's why I suggested when we sent this forward that we really need Kevin to weigh in on this. As, I mean, it's one thing, the three of us reading a law and regulations, but there might be something that he sees and knows of in that
Well, the other thing is that if you
answers
don't,
it.
if you don't want to encourage people to submit more than once, then counting the second one might not be the best idea.
I agree with you. That comes to my mind. You vote, you vote.
Do we have a lot of these?
You thought there were like 100, didn't you say, when we were
About 100?
discussing? Yeah, I mean, I was surprised.
It's just
So-
kind of.
Do you want Kevin in particular to weigh in, and then you want
Yes.
some further information from staff?
Well,
on
I
these?
just think we need some legal,
Clarification on it, absolutely. That's what we thought.
And then the fifth of the 5 issues was about these web delivery ballots. And as we worked through the options on that, and the options for putting that genie back in the bottle, what kind of process changes there are, the recommendation was that this current process is so unsustainable that the recommendation was that board staff should aggressively pursue the use of technology to either duplicate the ballots or directly tabulate them when they're printed on that letter size standard printer paper, which gets to the procurement discussion that we were having before with the state.
We can't really.
Right.
And didn't we suggest that there would be a group get together and look at all the regulations in light of the new technology?
Oh, yes. The email that you received talks about a couple of the legislative issues we've already talked about, and then at the very end it says, in addition, board members present agreed that either the State Board of Elections or Mayo, potentially in a Mayo effort led by the board attorneys, should conduct a comprehensive review of Maryland's election laws and regulations with the goal of achieving regulations that everybody that can understand, that are simple, easy, and uniform. And then in particular, a part of that effort that was discussed would be clarifying the roles of challengers and watchers.
And that is specifically because we've got new technology since most of this went into effect.
Right.
And that came from Kevin saying he
Yes.
pulled his hair out most days, which explains.
Now, you may want to go back through any of these and have further action items. But in your packet, you have a draft letter that would be sent as written to Senator King and Delegate Kaiser.
I'm sorry, that is just a model or a draft. It would be sent to the entire Montgomery County delegation.
Yeah, I was
Yes,
going to ask
sorry.
because Delegate Kaiser is an important member, but she's not the delegation chair.
Yeah, I know.
Who is it?
We just
Shane
gave
Robinson
this.
is the delegation chair.
We just provided you this letter as a draft, so
Shane
that you
Robinson.
would know what it's going to,
Right.
how it would appear.
Gotcha, sorry. And the way that this is written, it is following through on some further discussion about getting 2 scanners at every precinct. So this is specifically asking that Montgomery County be added to Senate Bill 406, which currently requires 2 scanners at every precinct in Prince George's County. It would be adding Montgomery County. One recommendation that I would make to all of you would be to amend this so that it also references
Okay, thank you.
Baltimore
the other
County
bill,
one.
the Baltimore
Yes,
County one,
yes.
yes. House Bill
Mention
1605.
both bills.
Okay,
What's the number of that bill?
House Bill 1605.
1605.
On the
All right.
same occasion where I ran into Senator Madaleno, I also ran into Senator King, and she seems very favorably disposed towards this whole thing.
All right, you
So-
send it to them.
Yeah, I can't imagine them not doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
I move we amend your letter, the letter that's going to go, to include the Baltimore County bill.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is
1605.
that the only amendment? Because if it is, then
Is the only one or anything else should be added?
have Jim send it with the
Yeah.
attachment.
Right.
Sure.
Anybody else?
Attachments, right?
Attachments, yes. And the attachments are your letters from 2014
Right.
and 2016.
Right.
I guess I have a question. I thought that, Jim, you had reached out to Senator Kagan on this issue.
Yeah, she
and
reached out.
Yeah, but then you responded
Yes.
back that, yeah, we want this, obviously we want Montgomery included.
But this is an
But
official.
why didn't that move forward, or
No, she emailed.
have you heard back from
No,
her that
no,
she
she-
couldn't do anything
No.
with it, or?
No, she emailed me and said, "Do you guys want to be amended?" It was like do you want to be amended to Prince
Yeah.
George's? And I spoke to somebody on staff. Said, "What's our official position?" I said, "Your board, our board."
Yeah,
We all agreed. So I sent her the 2 letters and said, "Our policy has been 2 scanners." So
And
We'd be happy.
Allison was over there that day when the bill was being discussed.
But I haven't heard anything
And
since
you
then.
briefed Kathleen Boucher, who is the Montgomery County lobbyist, that we were definitely in favor of it.
No, my concern was, and I knew that the history of our board was that 2 boards have approved it. Plus, I testified in the state senate. We presented Ike Leggett. So our position has been clear: 2 scanners.
So where does
No,
my
but-
motion stand?
But no, this was just in response to Cheryl. But my concern was these things are flying through the legislature. And I
don't wait.
want to get this
yeah,
on this year.
no, I agree. So I guess that's why I'm surprised that nothing happened, because,
I haven't heard
The
anything.
bill hasn't been reported out of committee yet, but I think that, those, I think the members of our delegation are pretty aware of our position, but I do think that having a formal letter doesn't hurt.
One thing, let me just, in the on the second page, in the first paragraph, the last sentence, in the primary election, some voters were so dissatisfied that they left.
Silver Spring Library.
Does that overstate what happened? I don't know.
That's what Alex said.
Okay.
Alex wasn't here. We certainly can strike the language.
No, it's not. I just
No,
throw that out.
I think it accurately states what we had heard here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
Silver
You know,
Spring Library, yeah.
that would,
They were upset. I mean, it was
Yeah.
7 o'clock in the morning. They went up there. Some of them had climbed 2 flights of stairs.
yeah, because the escalators weren't working
Right,
yet.
the escalators weren't working, and they get up there, and for whatever reason, the one scanner.
Yeah.
Allison, does the language say at least 2 in the statute, in the thing, or is it 2? Because we have some precincts
The
that
bill,
need
I think,
3.
says a minimum of 2.
Oh, okay.
Or does it say 2?
Because we've got a couple we could use 3.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
On the first
Um,
sentence, you could put in at least. He allocated at least 2 scanners,
A minimum
or
of.
minimum, whatever.
I think you should go through the letter, and everywhere where it says 2, just make
It's
sure.
at
It
least
says a
2.
minimum
Yeah,
of.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question about something that's in the 6th line of the first paragraph. It says that the Board of Public Works allowed the state board to lease additional scanners and support equipment from Montgomery County, so that 2 scanners were in nearly every precinct for the general election. And I guess my question is, I was not aware of or at least don't remember being aware of why the word nearly is needed in that sentence.
So there's some
Well,
background
some
on
had
that,
more.
is that at the point of planning, we were advised by the state and the vendor that we were supposed to plug the equipment directly into the wall, that the scanners had to go directly into a wall outlet, which is not feasible at every location, and there were some smaller locations that didn't have 2. But then during early voting, as we were confronted with the need to get more scanners out there
Right.
in rooms when we did not have 2 outlets, then those rules were at that time relaxed, so that we were authorized to go ahead and send scanners out using power strips.
Okay, did we have any precincts on election day that did not have at least 2 scanners?
Yes.
Oh, we did.
Damascus Library had 400 voters. There was the polling place at Shady Grove, University of Maryland Conference Center, which has 400 voters. 200 voters? 200 voters. The only places that I did that were one of 2 places. One, they were super, super small, and they were close to here. And then the other one was the electrical issue, which I didn't know about in July of 2016.
Right.
I mean, when they came up. But we pretty, Lisa and Janet's not here because she's out for a funeral, but, not her funeral, but out for a family
Obviously.
funeral. So there were just a few precincts that did not have 2.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I guess this is good, except the only thing they have to change
Yeah, at least
the
just
last 2 At least
At least
to
two, we're
scan
gonna
it.
add.
But Jackie's motion is still
And
passed,
Shane
but he
Robinson
says
is
that
the,
might-
it's
We
Delegate
amend
Shane
this.
Robinson, right?
Yeah, he's the
So
delegation
we gotta
chair.
take Ann Kaiser out.
Okay, I second
Respectfully,
Jackie's
since she
motion.
now chairs the Ways and
For what?
Means Committee.
Yeah, I know.
What's her motion?
That we accept.
Be
the
amended as we discussed and sent tomorrow by you.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
okay.
this one, go ahead.
Is there a second?
I did.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Okay, it goes. Thank you.
Lisa, Sylvia's just
Next.
Is there
Board
any other,
attorney.
legislation. No.
was there any other legislation that needed to be discussed?
Unless you wanted to go back and.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
we were.
Jackie,
HB
Mary Ann, I know you had
763.
in your, in that email that went around to the board, you had discussed Senate Bill 58, the election observers, and that you had wanted the board to reconsider its position on that bill.
What page is that on?
58 on.
It's on page 6?
Yes.
Well, this is the one that,
This is
isn't
page
it still
6?
being worked out, or?
I thought that's the one that, yeah.
This is the one where the concerns that I think you and Jackie had expressed were about out-of-state individuals getting
Yeah.
voter registration data.
Oh, and that wasn't here in this? Yeah.
This is the bill, but it's taken away from the local board. It's all up to the state now, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, I had problems with them being able to get voter lists.
Yes, we definitely had problems with them being able just to walk in and get voter lists, out-of-state people, who knows. And I have a terrible problem with the states telling us who can be in our polling places and how many
It's
people
only
can be
the
in.
state.
I don't know what we can do about that. I just want to go on record as saying that.
Because it takes it out of our hands completely.
Exactly.
Well, they do that now, though, to a large extent.
Does this, what do you think,
Problem with
Margie,
that, I
about
didn't know
that?
that.
Jim, I still have not read the bill, and
Okay.
that's my fault.
Well,
I should have remembered to
and one
do
of the
that.
things I thought we asked for was we wanted definitions of observers, watchers, and challengers.
Oh, that's absolutely
Remember,
right.
because
Yes.
they just throw out these terms, and it's like, well, what's the difference? Who falls into these categories? How are they defined?
Yeah, there's no definition between challengers and watchers.
Well, the way this bill has been changed, it's all up to the state, so we have no input unless, so.
And quite honestly, as I recall, one of the concerns I had was that one of these terms, and I think it's observer, is there is a legal description in election code for a watcher. There is a legal description for a challenger. There is no legal description, the definition, for the word observer. So I could be wrong, but it introduced a new word that was not part of the definition in the election code. And so you're right, anybody and his brother can come in.
Do we know if the state board would be, by regulation, authorizing us to make these decisions, or if this is definitely them?
It says authorizing the state board.
Right. But I mean,
Historically,
Yeah.
Margie needs to respond to this probably more so than me, but historically, the state board attempts to reach out to us to notify us when these obviously, we're Montgomery County. We're right on the edge of the District of Columbia. The U.S. State Department is constantly reaching out either directly to Margie or directly to the State Board of Elections. It is rare that the state just plunks someone in our lap, but jump in here.
These are the foreign groups that we've been asked to allow.
Well, I'm not going to contradict Margaret, but I will say that the general election in 2016 was the most communication I have had with the state board regarding visitors, challengers, watchers, whatever to the definition is that we're using. And there were a couple of times when I contacted them and said, look, don't put anybody else in a particular precinct, or don't send anybody else to this precinct. There were a couple of
And did
precincts.
they honor your request?
As far as I know, yes. But when they issue the certificates to people, they don't always notify me. So I don't know, and I'm not out there, and I don't know that sometimes that they've done that, so we don't have a board member necessarily following through. Now, have I ever received complaints from election judges? Not to any great detail. I would be concerned about this. I think that there does need to be, there needs to be communication between the state and the locals, particularly in the case of PG and Montgomery, in my opinion, because we are the jurisdictions that they want to go to because we're close by. And so we need to have some modicum of control over how many people are being sent to what precinct. It is one of the challenges that I face every single election because all of the media wants to go to a particular polling place, and I have to constantly say no. I've got a group here. You can go here, here, or here, and it takes a lot of time to do that. And so, I do have some initial concerns about this, but I think there's some unanswered questions, and admittedly, as I've said, I have not taken the time to read it. So,
How would people feel about this bill if we changed state board to local board?
Oh.
increase your overtime budget.
Understood, but at least then we don't have to worry about the control
We can
issue.
say this consultation with the local board.
Yeah,
A little bit political, diplomatic.
we don't have the staff here to handle this all ourselves from Montgomery County, quite frankly. I mean, it does take quite a bit of time. I would certainly in consultation with, I think that would be more realistic.
Yeah.
But,
I think so. Don't you think so, Jim?
Well, could be the state
we
board
have
or the
to
local
revisit
board.
how we
Word.
did
If
things.
it's four,
So
they
you're
can still
saying
do
that
it.
they send people, they're okaying people to go into polling places independent of the ones that you set up when you
Absolutely.
reach out to us and
Absolutely.
former board members
See,
and all.
that's what's
Absolutely.
unconscionable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
State board with the
Is
approval
there-
of the local board?
Well, that was my question to you lawyers. Is there a word that is in consultation with, but that is approval?
Well, yeah, in consultation, they can
mutual
still do
approval
it.
or something.
But
Well,
approval,
in consultation, they can
Still do it.
call you and leave you a voicemail.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
You do it.
Whereas approval,
Yeah,
Or
with a
mutually approval.
Well,
Mutual approval. That's-
No.
It can't be that way.
No.
The local board has to say, we approve of this.
so why don't, state board with the approval of the local board?
I
Yes.
like that.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
makes sense, and
I
that's
like
clear.
that.
yeah, I'm good with that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all in favor of
With
state board with the approval of the
Yeah,
local
and
board?
how do we do this? Write a letter to Senator Kagan to ask her to add that?
Yeah. I guess then we need to draft another letter like the one we just did for Senator King.
Try to let it know.
And we
Yeah.
continue to have no position, but we,
Mike? I'm
Yes,
sorry.
that change-
Wait, David,
You have a
no,
position.
I've got a
David, you-
procedural question.
Mike, go
Are you
ahead.
supposed to go through intergovernmental relations, or is the state appointed board? You don't have to.
That's a good question. Don't we deal with somebody on like Leggett's staff that does the
In the
legislation?
past, the board has not.
We have not in the
If it has to do with budgetary items, we consult with the local government to obviously
Yeah,
get
no,
the
local
funding
gov-
portion
part of
of
local
it,
Yeah,
but otherwise, no.
not for the local government.
That's just,
Technically.
I wasn't sure because you're not in the exact same position
Other
as
people.
probably 99% of other boards and commissions. I just want to make.
right. We're appointed by the governor for one
There,
thing.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
difference.
there have been
Right.
instances where the local board of elections has had a different position with the previous county executive in the legislature. I'm not familiar with anything
So unique.
here.
I just didn't want you getting crosswalks with Melanie.
Allison, can you draft a letter for me to
Sure
can
can,
send it
yeah.
around?
Yeah, the other question that had been discussed on this bill had been the extent to which it is appropriate or acceptable for individuals who are not Maryland registered voters
To be
to
observers.
be observers. And I think the main question that
that coming
Jackie and Marianne were talking about was obtaining the voter registration data, whether that's okay or not okay. Different people have different. I've worked for organizations that requested voter lists, out of state and, use them to try to do analysis.
But somehow
there
we
was
talked
concern about that
this
too.
was had to do with them asking for it the day of election.
As amended, it says, in fact, the original bill, I think, does limit election observers to be Maryland registered voters. But as amended, I think it takes out that restriction.
Oh, really? They took
And
it
they can
out.
get them on election day from the judge.
I'm sorry, took
Is
out
it
the
that?
restriction.
That you have to be
the way
a
that's
Maryland.
written, well, first of all,
Registered
there
voter.
is
Forth on that.
there is no paper register
No,
available
yes, it is. No, I know
in the
that.
precinct. So they would be required to come here and
Okay.
purchase a list, but we don't sell paper lists any longer. We provide a CD.
I think the confusion on that came from the fact that it's not explicitly in the language of the bill, but that's a regulator, that's a regulatory, the state board's got the regulatory authority to limit where and when and how you can get the data.
And when I questioned the state on this particular topic, they said that if the agency that was involved in this, they're required to make that request 21 days prior to.
That makes sense. All right, that makes sense.
So the local control issue is or the local sign-off issue is the primary issue here, and
Okay, and we've taken care of it. The letter's going to be written. David's going to send it
so
to.
that's it, okay.
On the letter to Nancy King and Shane Robinson, did you mention we want to send it to the county council or no?
No.
No,
This is a
to the Senate.
county delegation.
Right,
To
right.
the whole delegation.
Whole delegation,
Um,
correct.
Allison,
And the chairman of the committee.
on this other issue here with the polling place, did it address where these people could go in the polling place? I mean,
Oh, yeah, we
because
did talk about
there's a designated area that's behind the,
The chicken
as opposed to just roaming around and, wanting to talk to the
We're
chief.
looking at people as they're voting. If they could roam around, they could walk behind people. We even had people that have been in line, and we've had people, I was there when people complained, standing there voting, and the line was coming behind them, and they said they can see me,
Right.
And so, yes, we didn't want people wandering around.
Right.
I read the bill as leaving that question to the state board by regulation.
I thought we already had. I thought we already had the regulation.
Can we regulate that?
I thought we had the regulation.
We don't have any regulation for this new category they're
Right.
creating.
Oh.
That's the
Oh,
problem.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
yeah, don't-
now I got it. I got it.
Yeah.
So there is.
Well, but the statute likely would result in a new regulation
Would it be-
that would adapt for it, wouldn't
Yeah.
it?
Can we regulate in our own county? Can we
Yes.
make a regulation to say where they go?
No, we don't do a regulation.
Where they can
We
go.
do
What can we
have
do?
specific guidelines that come from Comar that designate where a challenger and watcher may be in the polling place.
So we would want an observer to follow by the Comar
The same.
regulations.
Yes.
So do we need
Can
to
we
ask
say that?
Senator Kagan then to add that to her bill?
Or at least to make that the result.
It's part of the regs. Jim, do you want to get Leslie?
Yes, because
Oh,
it's
Leslie.
saying here,
wait.
it's a new category of election observers in addition to challengers and watchers with the same rights and responsibilities in the polling place as accredited watchers and with the same access to voter registration information. That's the weird.
What's behind this? We couldn't figure out what was behind that.
Leslie?
Leslie, do you know?
You're right that currently there is no observer category. There's challengers and there's watchers. And then you have the accredited and the non-accredited. So it seems as if you have to sort of figure out what they want them to do. The accredited challenger, if you will, is the one who's been designated by the state board through their whoever they're representing, and they can, they come in with the list. They can It's about, we say 3 to 4 feet behind check-in. They can listen and observe the voter interaction. They can be there in the morning, 30 minutes before to witness opening. They have to be there 30 minutes before closing to witness to closing. They're not wandering around. Then you have the other challenger that comes in who's non-accredited, someone who follows a voter in or could themselves be a voter and says, this person is not, this is not in the feed. I know her, and their challenge, challenges based on identity. That individual makes that one challenge, and they have to leave.
Oh, really?
Okay, they have to leave.
After they've signed a piece of paper.
Yes, after they've been through, but they can't just stay there and pick people out. They make that one and leave. Watchers, they come in. They're also accredited, and they are not making any challenges. They're the ones that are there with the list, listening to the names and checking off. And then they typically do a shift. Same thing, they're not wandering around the precinct. They don't have the access in the morning or the evening. They're just there for their shift to monitor activities.
Now, the people that we get as a result of Margie, who are, from embassies or maybe even press, foreign press or something, what category are they in this? Are they watchers, observers?
They're not.
They're not. Okay.
It's a courtesy.
And that's why I do my best to arrange for a board member to meet them.
Right.
So that you all can spend 15, 20 minutes with them, answer their questions, and then they're on their way. They haven't disrupted the polling place at all.
So the
This
code
would
right
allow
now
them to come
says-
to the polls without us?
If I don't know it,
Right.
and that's a whole other thing. When we
What did you say, David?
It's then up to the
What did
chief
you say?
judge
right.
to
Can they
allow
come
them in
down?
if they have time to deal with it, to control that there are no disruptions.
The code says that an election judge shall allow the following individuals to have access to the voting room at a polling place, and then it lists voter, someone who accompanies them, polling place staff, etc. And the very last item 7 on the list, is any other individual authorized by the state board or local board. And so this bill is putting more meat on that.
This bill really
bones
doesn't
of
need
that.
to be in it at all.
So that's really broad. Yeah.
It's the legislature saying that this is a category, and here are the rules that should govern that, without Margie, or Margaret or you necessarily agreeing to it.
All right, so we want to add with approval to this bill that.
Okay.
I wonder why.
With approval of the local board.
Exactly.
Before you move on, House Bill 73, the 16-year-olds, the position of the board is opposed as introduced. It's been amended. Is the board still in opposition? Is the board in support? Is the board in opposition?
We said something about that.
What number is
We
that?
talked
Very
about
much.
That's the first
The
one.
very first one.
that was something.
The first one. The minimum wage one that I.
So if the wage stuff is gone, and if this is a bill that's just about 16-year-olds,
Jim, I would like to say for you guys to reconsider this. I was looking at the demographics of our judges in the last election on page 5, and then Gilberto, I'm going to put you on the spot since you did the future voters. In such a model successful program, and I was looking at the age of 70-year-olds, the number of judges that served who were 17, and it's over 200. And then you look at the 18-year-olds, that's 81. So about 300 judges are between the ages of 17 and 18. About 50 of them were bilingual judges. And I wanted to ask Gilberto about, because we had so many young people working through the Future Voters program this year. How many do you think of those were 16-year-olds?
Very few. What happens is our bulk, our middle school, I'd say about 60%.
60?
60,
Okay.
65. And as they get into high school,
Yep.
freshman, junior will be the bulk of all high schoolers, and then it's SATs, college visits, applications, and so there's a huge drop. And that's the reason why 4 years back we looked at recruiting junior seniors, because they had that interest in future votes, but because the argument is you need to focus on college and preparation after high school. And then also by that time, our civic-minded youth, they have at minimum 75 or hundreds of SSL hours. So the pressing need for credits or more things on their academic or community curriculum is less, where they're more focused on after high school.
So, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm a believer that in any way that we can support to have quality judges, I'm always very impressed by the judges that we have, especially the young ones and some of the people who actually do a lot of even some of the greeters who are in middle school are going to be moving through the ranks and become 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And I truly believe that's where the fostering of the future judges are, in that category. As someone who helped run a campaign at the age of 16, and Sidney Katz with the city of Gaithersburg many moon years ago, there's a lot of civic-minded young people that are out there. And quite honestly, I don't think a year makes a difference, because some of them have been involved, like Gilberto said, from 6th grade on. I know that all my kids have done so through, they started in 6th grade and they move up. They know the system probably better than some people who just might sign up to become a judge. They know systematically how it works. They are passionate about it, and I think those are the kind of folks that we need to.
Let me ask a question of what you're talking about. If all the language is removed about paying them.
Mm-hmm.
We use them now, right? If they're 16?
No, 17.
Oh, I thought you said you didn't have very many 16-year-olders.
No, so you have future vote, which encompasses students from 6 through 12.
Volunteers.
A large volunteers, and they earn SSL, student service learning credits. The majority of our junior, seniors, 16, 17, 18-year-old are students who don't meet the requirements to serve as a 17-year-old election judge. So a lot of the students they don't have U.S. citizenship.
So
they want to participate.
The requirement isn't age; it's other things. You're saying.
Yeah, to serve as a judge. But then the drop after their sophomore year is such that their focus is on another thing. We're still going to the high school, and we still recruit, and we still.
I appreciate that. My question is, now there are some 16-year-olders that come and work as volunteers or whatever. Then this doesn't do anything for us.
Yes, it
one
does.
way or
Yes,
another.
they could now be paid election judges.
The language was taken out, but all the money they just
No. The minimum wage.
The minimum wage for judges that apply to everybody.
The bill solely right now deals with letting 16-year-olds.
So we can't pay 16-year-olds.
Correct. We cannot pay them right now. Correct. Correct. And
how do you feel about it, Margaret? You had these. Do you have an opinion on this?
My only thing is that if the bill were to pass, I would ask the board that they would not serve as provisional judges and not chief judges. Ever.
Well,
if you look at the suggestion that we came up with, we took up this issue, and I thought that we went through this, but we were in favor of the 16-year-olds. However, the caveat we put in there was not to serve as chief judge, provisional judge, or the same-day registration judge. And this was based on comments from you, Margaret, in terms of...
I thought we'd come up with something.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
That's fine.
What does it mean here when it says, and work more than 12 hours on election day?
That goes back to the labor law.
The labor laws of minors.
That they've already struck that language.
Oh, okay.
There was a concern that they would not be able to, and so that just ensures that they would in fact be able to work.
So they can work a part-time shift, doesn't have to be 12.
They can work a full-time shift.
And not just election day, but early voting, primary. It here said
What
just
about
election
the-
day.
They have
The
school.
way I read the bill, it actually just says election day, but, or it only clarifies it for election day. It doesn't
They
clarify
have
it for
school,
early voting.
except weekend.
There's a lot of other days other than election day.
Yeah,
Yes, David.
Dave?
yeah.
I want to support what Gracie was saying here.
Flower.
Okay, I'm sorry. I want to support what Gracie was saying. I also think that if we can get a couple of hundred judges out of the 16-year-olds, that would be a major benefit to us. And I personally would not limit them unless we're limiting other people for similar reasons. My understanding is that we choose people for our judge positions based on their ability and based on how they do in the training and based on how they do when they work. I would do the same for 16-year-olds. I assume, do we have any limitations on what 17-year-old judges can do?
No, we do not at this time, but I would have some, and I don't want my issue is I do not want a 16-year-old nor a 17-year-old to be in the position to tell a grown adult that they are not going to be allowed to vote for whatever reason.
Well, you make those
they
assignments.
They need to have to be a chief judge that is in charge of the poll.
But you make the assignments, right? That's a staff decision.
Yes.
So do we have to address that if staff makes the
We don't
assignment?
have to mention it again.
Well, they aren't always made here. Certainly, chief judges, yes, except we have had occasions when a chief judge isn't there come election day, and, it's called an on-site promotion type of thing. And certainly with the provisional and the same day registration judges, I don't think that's necessarily done from here, is it? Isn't it done amongst the group when they get together? No. Oh, okay.
Folks,
We make all assignments.
we've had 16-year-olds serving on the school board for many years. And the idea that they...
results.
I'm sorry?
With mixed results, but go ahead.
Well, that's your opinion.
I'm
It's
sorry.
lasted for almost 40 years.
Not the first member.
No, the first member was 17 when he was there. There were no mixed results there, just a lot of controversy.
Well, as I pointed out to
Um,
David when he
yeah.
raised this issue with me, it's one member with a
Right.
small
You're talking
board
general.
of
No, what I'm
this
saying-
is going to be a couple of hundred, hopefully,
People dealing
kids
with-
out there.
Right.
public.
And
I've
how,
seen
and,
this
right, but
problem.
how many problems have we
I've seen
had
this
with
problem.
17-year-old judges? I've never heard of one sitting at this table. Okay? In fact, I've heard the opposite. I've heard everybody say how good they are, how committed they are. The message that would be sent by saying, yes, you're in, but you can only do menial tasks.
They're not
essentially.
menial.
Okay, whatever the
They
case.
really are not menial.
I'm
not
saying-
taking
Right now it's up to
offense that.
staff, right?
Yeah, we're not assigning people.
Yeah, Margaret and the
Keep in
staff.
mind, that you're absolutely right, that's a staff.
I think the question is whether we're going to let them
16-year-olds be judges.
16-year-old be judges,
Yeah,
serve, and
that's
be
it.
paid what I think is just.
That's it,
If I
period.
may, yeah, so
And
you
the
can-
rest,
Yeah, the rest is up to
would
staff.
do.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
then.
do
All
I
right.
understand correctly that recognizing there's an ongoing discussion about the exact tasks that individuals perform?
No, I wouldn't, because
That
Mark, you
House
guys
Bill
make that decision.
73,
The legislation.
do I
the
hear
position.
that the board wants to change its position from oppose as introduced to support as amended?
Yes,
Correct.
the way it is. Yeah, that's it.
So moved.
Full support.
So, second?
I move. You move? Okay.
Yes.
A second.
All those in
I have-
favor?
All
Aye.
right.
I'm a little concerned in that we don't get to see this exact. We don't know what we're signing on to here, do we?
I wonder about just
do you mean?
withdrawing our opposition.
Well, where's the bill?
Because the language was
The
changed.
bill is
Yeah,
very.
the language
it's-
is changing. We
it's-
don't know what
all it
we're-
says is
what we're
16-year-olds
for.
can serve as judges.
We don't know for sure
That's
what
the meat of
we're
the
for.
bill.
I understand the meat of the bill. I want to read the
Recognizing
bill.
that
There's
you want to
legal
see the
language.
proof.
She can send you it.
Right.
Recognizing that you want to see the proof before we in any way communicate that.
Have we already communicated our opposition?
Within, we did not testify formally, but within talking to people and within the Mayor Legislative
Can
Committee,
you
yes.
send us a copy of the bill?
Yes, I will get an amended copy of the bill and I will.
Yeah,
send
because
that
there've
around.
been now a couple of amendments.
Did we just vote on it or
Right,
not?
there was no final,
There was
there
no
was a
vote,
second, but there
because
was no
I
vote.
thought we just did.
Well, I didn't vote.
There was a
because I'm
first
gonna
and a
withdraw
second.
I'm not going to, I'm
No
not going
vote.
to
So
vote
let's-
yes or no.
We didn't vote
So
yet.
We
Allison's going to
didn't
send us...
vote. You just move and a second.
Right.
Let
Right,
them
Alan will
vote.
send us the bill.
No, he asked for the vote.
Yeah.
I hear
We did
what
that.
members are saying. I think I heard you vote to support as amended, but I recognize that that is not something that staff should act on unless it's actually been amended, as I just told you it was. So if my statements are true, that this bill now just lets 16-year-olds serve as election judges, period, doesn't get into the wage issues, then the position of the board is support as amended. If I'm wrong in my characterization that I presented to you, then
Lisa, what are
we
your
won't do anything.
minutes?
I do not have an official vote from every board member. There was a first and a second, and it was go ahead, but there was.
Did he call the question?
Yes.
But there was no yay or nay.
Yeah,
or,
you didn't say all in favor. Did you?
I think he did.
I think I said it.
He
but I don't know.
did
I don't-
say- he
Did
did
we
say
vote though?
in
Did we
favor.
vote though? I'm not sure.
Mr. Shaw, could you ask for a roll call vote?
Well, I agree
Just
with.
call the yeas
I
and
agree with
nays. I
Mary
don't
Ann.
think
We
that-
want to see the bill first, right?
Well, but I'm
Well,
happy with
is
what
there-
what
is
she
there-
said.
Is there a reason that we need to see the bill first for this when we didn't need it for other things?
Well, I
Why
think-
wouldn't we just do what Allison just said?
Okay.
Support in concept the idea that 16-year-olds can be judges, and the rest of it can be subject to reviewing the bill in the next 24 hours if that's what it takes.
That makes sense.
But I mean, I think that we were all in agreement on that.
That's with parental consent, it says.
Yeah.
Also.
I just don't get to get you all to call the question again until March 20th. So.
Okay, so all those in favor of David's motion?
Motion, the way
Okay.
we said it, just the first
Second?
part. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
Opposed? One abstention? Okay.
Until we hear
All
more.
in favor, one abstention.
Okay, anything else?
I'm done.
All right,
Unless
good,
any
thank
of you have
you.
something, I'm done.
Thank you,
No more
Allison.
talk, Allison.
Shut up now.
You got to see Allison work the legislature. She's great.
Okay.
She's born. I won't say politician.
Let's
but-
move on.
Be careful.
We
don't
don't have-
offend her.
Allison works the whole. Excellent.
We don't have attorney report,
We do
Margaret.
not have an attorney report.
Okay, so we're up to.
Old
We know-
business.
where is the attorney today?
He had some business issues, I think.
Old business.
Well, this is business.
Yeah, I was going to say, we pay him.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right, Margaret? Old business,
where are we up to?
All business.
new business.
The new business will be the election judge recruitment report.
Okay.
A report was sent to you, and we do have a PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay?
this is by
And
Oh.
Leslie Wood.
Leslie.
Whoop.
Oh,
Now we can take a nap.
It got dark. Now this is old business or new business?
pass both.
She said it's new.
It's new.
Well, it's, yeah.
We don't
Where's
have
my,
any
I have a lot of questions
about what? This
about
stuff?
this report. Absolutely.
Where is
I have pages of minutes.
Where
I
is
didn't
it?
have time to even look at
Well,
it.
that's too bad.
I
Where
know.
is it?
Yeah.
It is.
No, I was looking for my.
I'll show you the
However,
report.
What is this mine?
Yeah.
So where are we?
New business.
Oh, I know.
Okay, we're on, this is
Election
the
judge.
election judge recruitment report.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
Okay.
These are the summaries of the common cards that came from the judges.
Allison, so you're going to put a draft for Cheryl Kagan?
No.
Were you going to do that? Was that one of your to-dos?
No, it's from the vote. I'm sorry. I take it back.
No.
The voting, but look,
The Cheryl Kagan letter.
Oh, the election observers.
Yeah.
from places where we didn't have
Yes.
voters.
That's with the approval of?
From places where we had lots of voters.
I will work with Kevin. Somehow or other, we'll get a draft from circulation.
75 cards.
And the other letter, you can
Okay.
just call me, right, Lisa?
But 820
On the other letter, you can just call me?
Yeah, Margie's working on
Yes.
that one, I
Oh,
think.
we're ready?
Leslie's-
Okay.
Leslie's ready.
Leslie, all
Go
yours.
ahead, Leslie.
Okay. Well, the report that you have is fairly large, but I sort of boiled it down a little bit to do the PowerPoint. If you've got any questions, I'll be more than happy to go through it. So our basic functions involve election judges, recruitment, training, assignment, and then service. We'll talk about recruitment first. Okay. We start with the application. We did fairly well this time. We got a total of 2370. The majority are online, and those are individuals that are going to the website and completing their application completely online. That's a mix of either new or returning. The returning are folks that we have, they're in our system already from a previous election or either a previous application. Outreach was 351, high school 251, and 71 by mail. We have a very small number that.
I'm sorry, what's the time frame for this?
This is July 10th through probably the week before the election.
So is this different than what's in the report?
No.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Age. The majority of our judges are between 51 and 80, though we have a large number of 17-year-olds. We had less 17-year-olds this time. We lost them. They went off to college. So our numbers were down from the primary, but we still had quite a few. The numbers in blue are the total. The numbers in red are the Spanish speaking.
Are the what?
Spanish speaking.
Oh, okay.
The age of the Spanish speaking. Okay. Languages. We have very multilingual.
I'm sorry,
course.
for the Spanish, is that country of, do you mean that country of origin, or is that the speakers?
Speakers.
Thank you.
Okay, languages. We have shown a representation. Now, these are not necessarily, particularly for the Spanish, all of our Spanish-speaking judges. They may work in other positions. They could be a VOP, a chief judge, and so this is just the advocate of all of the multilingual that we have. 391 in Spanish, 262 in French, 120 in Chinese, and the Chinese is represented by both Mandarin and Cantonese. 14 that speak Vietnamese and 6 who speak Korean.
Do we have overlap?
Certainly, but we go on what they are primary, what they self-identify as their primary. Typically, the folks who speak French may also speak Korean or Vietnamese, but we go with their primary. Party, these are party statistics. Majority are Democratic. Republican, we were able to have a 17% increase in the numbers of Republican election workers that we recruited, which is very, very good. We struggle trying to make sure we have that representation. Other is still tiny, and that's a mix of green, libertarian, and other. As you can see, our unaffiliated numbers are going up. They're almost neck to neck with our Republicans. Okay, training. All right, our training is split up into 2 parts. Stage 1 is the prerequisite training quiz, and stage 2 is the hands-on class. Okay, so for the training quiz, 2,368 took it, 27 passed. The fail is 10%, which is a problem. But what we found is we have a lot of people who log in and say, I don't need to read those chapters. How hard could it be? And they don't do well. 101 of them, if you can look where it says failed 241, 101 of them did go back, retest, and pass. That characterization is part of our high schoolers who are like, I don't want to take another test, I'm just going to wing it. Or our returning judges who figure, I got this, I know this. And they really don't remember all the details from election to election. Hands-on training, this is the classroom. It's listed on the left. the number that we train by position. Our training outweighs our number that works. It's about 1,300 that we trained that did not work for some reason.
1,300 didn't work?
Yes. Yes. They changed their mind, work comes up, I gotta go out of town, you know, all kinds of life issues. So.
Had we paid those for people for training?
No. They don't get paid if they don't work.
I hadn't paid them yet. Okay.
In order to get paid, you have to train and work.
And work. Thank you.
Yes.
I have a quick question. So this is everybody that was trained, but not necessarily everybody who worked.
Correct.
All right. Okay. And you have another chart of everybody who worked.
Yes. Mm-hmm. The majority of our position that we train are VOPs. Now, added to this 43% are your VOP AVs, which are the part-time, and your VOPD, which is the driver, and the Spanish, and the opening. Okay? All of them take VOP training. Capacity. This is training capacity. By week, starting at the bottom, going up, our total was 80%, which means that 8 out of 10 of our seats were filled. We did fairly well. I actually went and looked. Week 5 was like the first week of October. I'm not sure why week 6, why we took a dip there, but I don't know. It was sometimes once school gets started, we sort of have a push, and then we sort of dip off as people get busy and they've got other commitments. So, but overall, it was fairly consistent, very good. Okay, training locations. Off-site training, other than here, is something that our judges are always looking for, particularly those in the eastern part of the county and the southern part of the county, because they don't want to fight the traffic to come up. We used the Silver Spring Civic Building, Rockville campus of MC, and Tacoma Park campus of MC. The majority of our training is here, with 16% off-site.
That's 16% of people?
Of the training.
It's not the number of classes, it's the number of people.
People, yes. All right, service. Work. Okay, so election day on the left, early voting on the right. Our requirements were 3642. We assigned 3632. We had 135 no-shows. We were able to replace 79 of those. So we had 3576 that actually served. A little over 1,000 of those were part-time. Early voting requirements were 1913. We assigned 1933. We had a total of 35 no-shows over all 8 days. And we had a total of 523 workers that fulfilled those 1,933 positions. We had 13 greeters part-time through SBE. All right, and this is just a graph showing our election workers over the last 8 years, from 2008 to 2016. This is the highest number that we've had since 2008. Feedback. We do a lot of feedback. We get a lot of information on how the election proceeded. In addition to the comment cards, which I'll go over in a second, we send out a survey to all of our judges. That information is contained in your report. We look at peer-to-peer surveys so that they can tell us how the team worked together. And then we also look at the call center logs, Roma reports, and any other feedback that we get from voters. So the comment cards, we have 2 sets, early voting and election day. These are handed out to voters, and they're asked to complete them. It's very short. 3 questions and a comment area. And they tell us how they think it went from their perspective. So for early voting, the first question is this polling place well run? 92% said yes. We had a little over 14,000 responses.
Are they anonymous?
The second question, were the election workers welcoming? 93% said they were.
Leslie, are those anonymous?
Yes. Yes. And then were they helpful? Election workers who were helpful, 94% said yes. Election day.
Excuse me, of the
Yes, ma'am.
complaints that you got, was there one that was more, of the few complaints that you got, was there one complaint that stood out?
No.
Thank you.
No. If you in the report, I do list some of the things that they say could be improved. It's pretty much all over. They want coffee and donuts, and
Yeah.
you know, you have the people who like paper and the people who don't. You know, no,
There
nothing really
wasn't any
stands out.
one thing. Okay,
No.
that's
Okay. Election day comment cards. Polling place well run. 89% said yes. And we had a little over 24,000 of the comment cards returned from election day. 90% thought the election workers were welcoming. And 92% thought they were helpful. And the last piece of feedback we have is our review of the precincts through our precinct performance report. We look at the tasks that they are assigned to do and how well they did it. Did they fill out the paperwork? Did they do it correctly? Did they send the paperwork back? So this is the results, the summary of the precinct performance report. Unfortunately, those folks at the bottom with the unsatisfactory, we've got to take a hard look on whether or not, particularly the chief judges, need to continue in the position. Sometimes they're brand spanking new. You know, in other cases, they've been doing it a while and skills have started to dip. Sometimes their provisional judge might have hijacked them, you know, and messed up on provisional, and it messed up their rating. So we'll use all of this information when we go into training with the teams for 2018. For the primary, we'll go through the precincts, work with the chief judges, work with the individual judges so that we can get their ratings up. But we had 72 precincts that were outstanding, 54 did very good, and 50 did good. So that's the top range, and I think they did a really good job.
Leslie, who made those ratings?
We did as a part of
Staff.
Yes. Yes. That's all I have. Any questions?
Yeah. So, would you remember that earlier chart that I asked you about, whether that was the totality of the judges? I was looking for a chart, and maybe I missed it, of the day of the election, like exactly how many judges, closing judges, VOP, drivers, professionals we actually had on election day. And I was interested to know in those categories, not just the totality of the bilingual Spanish-speaking ones, but of where did the bilingual judges fit into those categories. You know what I mean? Like if you had, I don't know, a couple hundred chief judges, how many of those were Spanish-speaking chief judges?
Okay.
If you had closing judges or readers, how many of those spoke Spanish? Like that's interesting to see in that correlation.
Okay.
And I was also interested of knowing the totality of the future voters. I didn't see that information. Oh, you're gonna give a report?
Yeah.
Oh, I was hoping it was part of this report.
I still have questions about this report.
So I'm sorry, I didn't let you answer.
Okay. No, that is not included, but
Well, David, you had questions of Leslie?
Yes.
So let's finish with Leslie first.
So Leslie, to follow up on that, I think it's really important information to see exactly. I think when things go wrong in a lot of precincts is especially if you have precincts in specific areas where you have a large bilingual Latino Spanish speaking area like Wheaton or areas of Gaithersburg and so on, that some of those folks who are there are part of the chief judges or the assistant chief judges and so on. So that's what my interest is, to see how we can increase that, those areas. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who can explain to a voter why you're not allowed to vote and you're going to have to vote provisionally. And this is the system, or this is why we're doing it, instead of just having a greeter who might just speak Spanish but not know in detail the whole mechanism of how the precinct is being run. Do you know, Allison, do you get me? So I'm interested to know, because I'm sure you have it, because you know exactly who's bilingual and who's not.
I can try to pull that together for you for next time.
Thank you. That would be
Okay.
that would be great.
Okay.
Let me just, Margaret, I just wanted to ask you one question before David. It looked, there was 24 precincts that staff felt didn't do a good job. What's the basic, in layman terms, why? Why are 24 precincts not meeting your standards?
Basically, as part of our audit, we're expected to ensure that specific forms are filled out correctly for beginners, like the valid counting form. That the tamper tape, they follow procedures in opening the DS-200. They're opening the ballot bags to account for all of the ballots that are assigned. In some cases, they open the blue bin, or they follow the instructions and not shove the DS-200 up against the wall and let it overheat and then shut down. So those are the types of things that we're going to look at. But we overall look at it in terms of what would happen if we would have to stop everything and had to conduct a recount. Did the election judges follow all of the procedures that the State Board of Elections has dictated, so that they're opening the polls properly and assuring that there are no early votes cast, that they are affording every voter the opportunity to vote, and then that they're closing in accordance to the requirements of the State Board. And we have certain checklists that we have identified. And then there are certain things like so that the voter, the VOP driver, is supposed to leave promptly by no later than 9:30 to return the memory cards so that we can upload and have results by 11 o'clock. So that's what we're going to assess it. It's going to be on processes that are required by.
No, it seems very comprehensive. Yeah.
And in the shift from the touch screens to the paper, the things that you're seeing the judges struggle with.
Ballot certification.
It's forms. It's forms. And unfortunately, at night is when they have to fill out their paperwork. They're tired and they're trying to multitask. And you have to be well organized, I think, to be successful, and many of them are. And many of them get that experience from election to election. Our new chiefs are the ones that struggle. It's one thing if you've been a VOP and you've been on the sidelines, but when you're up to that, and it looked good in training, but at 8:30, 9 o'clock, when you're trying to pull all the pieces together, it can be daunting.
And some of them can be super good, high-quality customer service chiefs, but they just didn't fill out the paperwork properly at the end of the night.
When you have a night judge, a closer, do they fill out the paperwork?
No. The chief judge
always does it.
Yeah.
The closer doesn't. But it gives
The
the closer.
closer judge is co-signing, and in theory, and most of them do, is supposed to be following that process step by step with the chief judges that are working. They're supposed to be working, if they have two scanners, they're going to work in a team, one Democrat, one Republican, one Democrat, one Republican, closing down the units and doing those critical steps so that units can, so that the memory files can come back here to get uploaded.
David?
Yeah, I had a few questions. It appears that our judges are somewhat concerned about the training. I'm looking at question 7 in the survey.
What page are you on?
Page 22.
Okay.
We have 31%, almost 32%, who believe that the training prepared them somewhat for their job, and 3% who said not enough, which means essentially that a third of the people are not feeling completely prepared, at least of those who are responding. And I guess this is consistent, Leslie, with what you were just saying. To have 14% of the people who want more training on closing suggest that they do need to get
Better at it.
Yeah, and I don't know whether the provisional is in the same category. That may be more of an all day long kind of thing, or is it closing of provisional what they're asking for when they say that they want more training on provisional? But I thought those numbers were quite striking as to how high they were. You also have 12% who are saying that the training materials were somewhat easy to understand and helpful, 1% saying no, so a total of 13%. Because obviously we all know certain things where if you know it halfway, that's good enough, but for our jobs here, that's probably not the case. Where we want them to know it cold. So I think consistent with that is when you did your evaluations of people, you got almost a quarter of the precincts where it was fair and needs improvement or unsatisfactory, which is a lot. And I guess my question is, what can we do to improve upon that?
There's a couple things. There's a couple things. One, we need more trainers. We need more classes, more time. I think this time, as you can see later in the report, the use of the videos were helpful. They were well received. But the fact that we had to create those ourselves at the last minute after we had already posted our schedule and sort of jammed them in to make it work took away from our hands-on time, which is what adult learners need.
Every learner, pretty much.
I don't know. Some of the 17-year-olds were like, just cut me loose and leave me alone.
Okay.
But everybody
I'm sure
else,
the 16-year-olds would be even better.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But most, they need more practice. They need more time. We split up our workforce to send half off to early voting and the other half stay back to try to do walk-in. One of the complaints that we had is that some of those that did walk-in didn't feel that they were given enough time. And mainly because I didn't have enough people to accommodate, sometimes, the 500 people that had cycled through here wanting one-on-one, can you hold my hand, and recreate training. And so there's only so much we can give them. I think we have things in place to help them. Walk-in practice being a part of that.
Would they be helped by having more assistants? I'm sorry. Would they be helped by having more assistants during the classes themselves? Because
there would be, but again, there's a time commitment.
Sure.
We're sitting at 4.5 hours, and some folks are like, that's too much, and other people are like, need more.
Right.
Where do you? I haven't found that perfect
Well,
formula.
you're not going to find something that's great for everybody.
But the other piece too is not only is there a trainer, but there's 2 support staff and sometimes 3 in every class.
In every training.
Yes.
So yeah, because the model I was thinking of, I'm married to a special ed teacher, so I was thinking about how the para educators are often there to assist with with the teachers, so that if someone needs individual attention, I'm not suggesting people who need individual attention necessarily in special education, but I'm just saying that a teacher's aide can certainly amplify what a teacher is saying, and I'm thinking that. It sounds like we're already doing it.
We are already doing that, but sometimes, and you went through the class, so you know. If someone's having trouble in the back, and a trainer is back there trying to help them, now you're dealing with sort of a background noise that can be disruptive to others. So we're trying to give them that extra help without it taking away from the whole. But I think we do a good job. I think we have a good trainer to class ratio. They can stay if they need to come back. That opportunity is there.
Are the trainers available to stay later when they after the session?
Yes, to a limit, with the understanding that
you can come back. Yes. No, I understand. As you should. We've talked about overtime.
If you're talking, 10 or 15 minutes, yes. If you're talking another hour, no.
Okay. My next question is about the comment cards. When I looked at the data from the comment cards, one of the things that's very striking is that the numbers of cards from different locations is very different from the numbers of voters. So I'm looking at page 13, where you've listed all the early voting centers.
Where did you vote?
Right, and the numbers there. I mean, essentially, the highest number of people who fill out these cards are at Mid-County, which was the second lowest number of voters.
I know at my place where I was, David, there was one of the judges was giving them out at the end, was giving them out and asking every voter to fill one out.
You talking about at Lawton?
Until I stopped it. What?
At Lawton you're talking about?
Yes.
Well, Lawton was the one that had the lowest number.
That's
of cards. Of cards. Not of voters, of cards.
Right.
And there really, I went through the whole list, and there's really almost no correlation. You would think that if it was done the same way in each place, that we would have not necessarily exactly in proportion, but you'd have some level of proportion. The one that actually made me notice this more immediately is when you look at what day did you vote. And the last day has, by far the fewest number, and we know that the last day has the most voters.
They're busy. They're busy. They're not really as concerned with handing out comment cards. And voters are not as concerned with filling them out.
I understand, but I guess what I'm saying is that if we are missing the input of the people who vote on the last day of early voting,
you can be there and hand out the comment.
I would be happy to.
Okay.
No one had comment cards. I would have done it. I would have given it to people while they were waiting in line, because at least they would have had something to do. But
well, you don't want their comment in the beginning. It's got to be at the end. But I can tell you from observing. Huh?
They didn't want to stay.
Oh, I have no doubt.
No, that's right. After you've been in line for an hour and a half.
Right. I have no doubt. I guess
what would you suggest?
I'm suggesting that we do whatever we can to encourage people to fill out the cards and to try and do it in a systematic way. I don't know whether it's every so many people, if it's at certain times, but I think we're going to be missing some significant data if we're only hearing from people who are there when it's not busy. Then we're going to miss a lot about how people. Because when it's busy is when we really need to know how people feel, and we need to get suggestions, and we really need to know what was slowing them down and what wasn't slowing them down. Because when things are going swimmingly and it's not busy, then of course they're going to say everything's going great. So that's. That's all.
I agree. I guess the thing is we are not at the point of assigning someone to do that specifically and only.
Well,
And so you're looking at.
Who gives out the I voted stickers?
A judge.
Okay. Can they give out the comment card at the same time?
They certainly can, but
Very often, though, that's at the
I need
scanner.
you to work the line.
That's where I kept
Then
seeing
you're working
the I
the line,
voted.
and the
Actually,
stickers are on the
if
table.
you really want to get some feedback, you can actually, what you can do is, and I don't think it's invasive, and you might not like the idea, but you can put it in the booth. People are always putting pens in the booths. You can put the comment cards in the booth, and whoever wants to fill it out, they fill it out, and then they bring it up. Say bring your comment card as you vote, and people have the option to fill it out or not, and they can bring it up and give it to the judge who's doing the scanning, and there you go.
Only problem is it could back up the voting booth.
Of course, the other thing you can do is
when it's really busy.
In a lot of places, the students are the ones who are giving out the I voted stickers.
Yes, I was going to say, let's put a 16-year-old.
And the students could definitely be the ones who are giving out the comment cards.
They do that. I think you see different numbers on election day for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Well, that could well be.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't have them, on the other days.
Okay.
Only the weekends for evening.
Let me move on. On page 8, where you talk about the capacity and the occupancy rates, you made clear that in 2014 people were able to sign up when they wanted to, and in 2016 we tried to influence people to sign up early, and we kind of held back some of our classes. So the idea that the occupancy rates are higher is just another way of saying exactly that. Because if you limit the number of classes, you're going to increase the capacity. I mean, you're going to increase the occupancy because there are fewer choices for people to make. So to me, that figure, while if our goal was strictly to make sure that we fill every seat, that figure is really important. I have a slightly different goal, which is to make sure that anyone who wants to get training can do it in a reasonable fashion. And so to me, what I would say is, you mentioned both here and in this report that a lot of people from the East County and the Down County are asking, why can't we do more off-site? And yet, we're doing more than 80% of our training here. And it sounds like the furthest east we go is the Silver Spring Civic Building, where we have the entire 29 corridor where, so I guess one of the things I would want us to consider is increasing the number and the timing of places that we go. I realize that when you don't do it here, that there's an added burden that is, on us. Less burden on the people who have to get here. And I know that it's a balance, but I would hope that we would consider trying to do more to get out to these places at times when people can attend.
Sure. Can I just chime in just on that, because that was going to be my next point was when I was looking at the occupancy and by location. I do agree that especially in areas like where the Prisoner Center is, I think we need to look at some of the locations where we have right now early voting centers and make an effort to have some training classes in those areas. I think the White Oak area is an area that we need to look at. Maybe the Prisoner Center would be a good place. People know where it is, and it might be, a good location. I think you need to look at Olney. I even think you need to look at maybe at the Potomac Recreation Center, now that we have an early voting center there. So I just think it'd be interesting to know, out of the judges that have gone through the training, who completed, it was the 3,700 judges who completed, it'd be interesting to know if we could have a visual of where do they live, like by zip code, to get an idea, because I think that might give you a better idea that traffic in this county is horrible. Mm-hmm. So if I live in the White Oak area, I'm going to think twice about coming to taking a training class here, especially if I have to do 270, especially if it's going to be in the evening. So I think it would be useful to, to see by zip code where our judges currently live, and that might be a way for you to look at where you might want to expand or having some of these classes at some of these areas.
Let me say, I know where our judges live. I know where the need is. The issue is finding a facility that will allow us to be there for a week at no cost, exclusively for the room so that we can secure the equipment. White Oak and Praisner both have been unable to meet that need because they have senior programs, they have feeding programs during the day. So we've identified sites where we could meet those requirements of no cost, a week, 5 days, and we have exclusive use of the room.
Holding how many people?
I think
30.
Leslie,
Because it's a combination of typically 16 and enough room for the equipment.
churches can do it, libraries can do it if you do it with enough time.
Some don't have.
With enough time and enough, and depending. So
Let us help.
So here's my suggestion as past chair of the ICB. If you guys come to the ICB or to one of the direct center, and I'm sure our county executive will be happy to support an initiative to engage of having citizens more involved in our voting system. If you come ahead, like a year and a half ahead or even for 2020 and say, we would like to have training in the White Oak area. White Oak right now is, for our county executive, is a priority of access. So it kind of goes with the mandate what they're doing right now in the county. And if you were to say these are the weeks that we need it for, with enough advancement and enough time, I think it's very doable. And I mean, more than happy to facilitate that whole conversation with ICB. But if you come like 3 months before or 2 months before, it's never going to happen because those centers they get booked up and like you said with senior programs and other resources and other programs. But I think it's doable, even in some libraries, to be able to.
Well, actually, these sites were booked in 2015 for these time slots. We did some negotiation, Roberto, with Silver Spring and sort of move things around. But it's very, very hard to get them to commit.
So have we
the
all?
reason we're not at Mendez anymore is because they said, sorry, we can't set aside our space for that length of time.
Wheaton.
Oh, in Wheaton.
So are we already booked for 2018
For
these training for the off-site training?
We don't have specific dates, but we do have a tentative commitment for these sites.
Now, what does that mean if we don't have dates?
Part of the reason is we were unsure if the election date was going to change.
I see.
And so I was waiting until that was confirmed because I don't want to commit to dates and then say, oh no, by the way, I need to move it up. So
Is there any legislation pending on the election date at all?
There was discussion earlier this year, or late last year, that they would be moving it up.
The primary?
There
So when
is no legislation currently pending to change the date.
So right now,
We do have summer camps to compete with in June.
what's the primary now?
June
26th.
June 26th?
Right.
So we'll be firming up the dates for these 3 sites. So if you have others that we can look at that you think would be open to us, by means, please share.
Well, maybe we should have a conversation outside the meeting because if you know if you already know the geographic distribution of your pool, or roughly geographic distribution, we might have ideas that we can all kind of contribute to that because I do think it would make a huge difference. And then just in the interest of time, I won't get into a long conversation about page 26, which is about allowing election workers to only work early voting. I do think we should have a conversation about that on another occasion, and Jim, maybe we can put it on a future agenda. But I do think that there are more options than the ones that are here, and we also should think about whether, while even if we don't say that we're going to routinely allow that to happen, whether we have a hard and fast rule that it can't happen, that someone works early voting without working election day, especially if they're an experienced judge, especially if we have already evaluated the people involved and know that they know how to do the work. It just seems to me that to have a rule like that, we could miss out on some really good people. So, I mean, I understand that there are issues, and I definitely, we should probably have a longer discussion about that.
Well, and also, early voting's growing all the time.
Yep.
I mean, those numbers are growing.
Yes,
So,
yes,
yeah.
right. Which means that we need the people for early voting. And so, anyway, but I thought the report in general was very helpful, and I very much appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have.
We have,
Do you have any questions for Roberto before he runs out of here?
Before he runs out?
no, really, we read it.
We have to ask
We read
questions
it.
before. We have to ask questions before he opens his mouth.
I did bring the
It's kind of like filling out cards
anybody's
before you.
interested in the precinct performance report.
Oh, yeah,
Is that? Yeah.
we are.
Are there copies for us?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is just a sample of 8 precincts, so you can see that the items that we reviewed. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
One page, yeah.
This was with it.
Oh.
Leslie, while Roberto's getting set up, in the interest of, we've got a couple board members here who's they've got ideas of facilities that might be willing to volunteer space for training and would like to help for that. The window of time when you would anticipate doing off-site training would be what? Late April, early May?
Yes. April.
April or May? Okay. So if board members have particular facilities and people you already know and might have discussions with, if they've got, I mean, I think Leslie would be amenable to hearing it from them too, when they have availability and would like to offer training in a way that works for them, then the conversation could go that way too.
Let me ask a question. Leslie stated multiple times that one of the requirements was no cost. If money were budgeted for this purpose, how much does it cost generally to do this? I mean, or is there a reason why it has to be no cost other than our lack of money, or if we can find money for it, then we can expand the horizon?
If you can find money from somebody other than the county executive, and they want to drop $10,000, $20,000, $25,000 to lease these facilities, we're certainly open to hearing that.
Okay. Thank you.
As it was the Eaton Volunteer Rescue Squad, or I think, what was that, $12,000?
Right.
The country club.
Roberto? Yeah.
Drinks.
Yes, sorry. So this is an overview for leading to the general in the 2000 presidential elections. Outreach overall, I feel, was a success. I think we had a great team, both with the leads from the board, executive board, and our volunteers and our staff. We had about 1,076 scheduled events from across the county, from across the community. In total, we had about 1,041 completed events. So we were pretty much in all corners. In the report, you have a zip code breakdown. We were as far from Poolsville to Tacoma Park to Fairland to Potomac. We went everywhere. A lot of the leads came from the community, from judges, from the board members themselves. So thank you as well for making that happen. This is the distribution within zip codes. And like I said, from Damascus to Potomac to Poolsville to Olney, we went everywhere. Also, our reputation for the type of outreach, which was all-encompassing. Department of Homeland Security invited us to attend the naturalization ceremonies, where the majority of the new naturalized citizens are from Montgomery County. And so we've been seeing a lot of fruits. Over 17,000 demonstrations within all these events, and within different languages and in communities. Also within the special needs and our growing Future Vote ambassadors. We had over 3,700 voter registration applications collected amongst all of the events. Here's actually Claudio. He's one of our bilingual Spanish-speaking judges who will become, future vote ambassador who will become a judge. He's right now a sophomore. He will turn 17 in time for the primary election. So, and he's been in the program since 6th grade. This was an event at the Long Branch Community Center with the National Federation of the Blind. We had a 510 absentee ballot requests. This was an event where we worked with the Chinese Culture and Community Service Center, where we did an education portion and piece about absentee voting as an option. Specifically, when it comes to identifying bilingual election judges within the Asian community, it's always been a challenge, especially in the Korean community. And a lot of times when they come into an early voting center, it stops the whole mechanism. So what we were doing a lot with these organizations, doing outreach as it pertains to absentee as a viable option for voting. Future vote ambassadors, 2 of our students. Once again, was very successful. Got a good kind of allotted volunteer base. As they get older, they go through the program. Like I said, the bulk, about 60% are middle school, 9th and 10th grade. A compass give and take about the other give and take 20-25%, and it goes down between juniors and seniors, just because of their ability to commit that day. Over 3,500 future ambassadors served within the presidential cycle, about 1,100 for the primary and 2,400 for the general. And so I know Gracie was at the training, so you saw how I think at that day the last training is very popular. Gracie was at the event. Also, David has been at those training sessions as well. His children, his twins actually were also future vote ambassadors. So it's a very popular program. In conjunction with outreach, participating, assisting us and the election judge during early voting and election days, over 30,000 community service hours. So it is a big help to the community and to our agency. This is at the Silver Spring Station. We always do our biannual early voting election day leaflet drop, where we pass out information, literature, and pamphlets at metro stations within Montgomery County. We had over 1,088 high school voter registration applications submitted with our outreach efforts within all the public high schools and also several private schools. Right now we are gearing up to do another drive before the students leave for the summer. A lot of the high school seniors, obviously a good percentage will be out of the states, but now that we have the date for the primaries, and all depending on the legislation with the 16-year-olds, we're looking at recruiting students because, how old will you be by June 26th of 2018? So we're going to get in front of the 8 ball and start recruiting it early. We had over 1,080 high school election judge applications submitted, and then you got the numbers, I think it was around 300 that actually served. So you give and take about a third. Of course, there's a lot of enthusiasm, but then when the students realize that there's testing, there's AP exams, there's applications, there are essays, letters of recommendation, but still, I think a good give and take 30%. It's a good turnout, and they're good individuals. They're very bright, and a lot of them were bilingual. They understand the community, and they want to serve within their neighborhoods. We had 4 future vote interns. These 2 came from the League of Korean Americans. Claudio was the other intern to help do the different high school recruitment. He spoke Spanish. These 2 individuals speak Korean, and we had one from CCACC that spoke Chinese. So we're going to expand that. It's great because of the different roadblocks in the school system. When a student calls, there's kind of that rapport. And then these students, Tim actually is a senior, well, he's not a graduate actually, was at Sherwood, the volleyball team. And Gay-Ji is to the right. She's a junior. She wanted to serve as an election judge, but she's a U.S. resident, so she couldn't. But she did recruit a handful of students to serve as election judge from Richard Montgomery, which is my alma mater. And just thank you, all the individuals involved with outreach. This is kind of a high level. I think overall was extremely successful. It's much different when you have a staff of committed outreach ambassadors beyond our volunteer base. Between Nina, Greg, Gabriel, they were bilingual. They had a lot of experience They're all chief judges. They work early voting. They've done same-day registration. And so I think the benefit of having a team such as our team for outreach, they actually bring their experience to the community, and they understand really how to meet the individuals halfway. So we're still doing outreach, so if there any activity that you know of, don't wait until 2018. Send them my way, and we'll follow up, and then we send a thank you letter to all of the events, and we're actually getting trickled requests for this year and leading up to the primary gubernatorial elections.
Well, that's really excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, I think the outreach for
Excellent.
this past election was really terrific.
Yes.
We
Excellent.
saw it in your reports
Excellent.
every month, and
I've been to a number of them. They're just excellent events.
it really, I think it grew a lot,
Yeah.
and it showed in our turnout.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think you do great. I have a quick question.
Yes.
Where in Montgomery County is Edgewater and Glen Burnie?
So Edgewater, we do an annual event with the Department of Human Rights, with the county
And that's
agency, and that's
Edgewater,
Edgewater
okay.
with students.
And Glen Burnie?
In Glen Burnie, we did an event. Who was the Glen Burnie?
All right, but it is in Montgomery County.
Yeah, it is within
I
Maryland.
just lived here a long time
Yeah,
ago.
no, Glen Burnie is not in
Been to
Montgomery
both of
County.
those places. Okay.
You also will see Baltimore because, like I said, because we do such an
Okay.
aggressive
Thank you.
outreach
I
that we get
just
invited outside.
wondered.
No, the county line is it.
Yeah, we turn away a lot of requests.
I thought maybe you were helping out other counties.
I think we annexed all of Tacoma Park many years ago, but not Glen Burnie yet.
Yeah.
So I think that's our agenda. Our next meeting is March
Future
20th.
meeting,
March 20th.
March 20th.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
That's the beginning of spring.
Can I just ask one thing?
Sure.
For the March 20th meeting, could we get a status report on whatever the thinking is so far on early voting sites?
On what?
Early voting sites.
Status report.
Whatever thinking has been done, whatever,
What early voting site?
well, we're going to have to pick an
We're gonna
11th one.
have an 11, right?
Yeah, we have to. We're having 11 next time.
When is that due? What's the time on it?
November of this year.
So we are not ready to talk yet.
Well, I'm not suggesting
or
that we
October.
that we have to decide. Just
We need
that
to
when I
talk.
hear from the staff on whatever
I don't want
their early thinking is.
Well, and I mean,
Well,
don't
it's
we have an
subject to
issue,
that.
right, with Wheaton?
We do.
So, I think we need to know the status of the existing sites and,
The status of the
if there are any others that have a problem with something.
Existing voting.
Yeah,
early
Lisa,
voting
can you put
site.
that on the agenda?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, anything else? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.